we're going to have a safety moment from Hotel Africana. I would kindly request that all the people at the back should move in front. Get yourselves comfortable as we get to start the function. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. You are most welcome to Hotel Africana. My name is Johnson Rugongeza. I welcome you to Hotel Africana. And I'm going to take you through the healthy moment. You are all aware that we have a pandemic. You are reminded that all sanitize all the time. We've got sanitizers around the room. If you need to use the lavatories, you move to my left, that door on my left. The ladies are on the left, upstairs. And with the fire assembly point is at the gym parking. So please, once again, remember to sanitize all the time. Thank you so much, and have a nice stay.
Thank you very much, Hotel Africana. And to all our guests, you're most welcome. Again, we do apologize for starting late, but we're trying to ensure that we get in quite a number of you so that you could not miss out this important event. Now, as we start, I know that there has been a lot of momentum and that continues to build in the oil industry. And of course, you all know that there's been a series of activities that have been undertaken to ensure that we get to see the first oil come out of the ground. Just on the 11th of this month, we witnessed the execution of various agreements, the host agreement, the shareholders agreement, and then we also had the tariff and transportation agreement signed. The purpose of these agreements was basically to kickstart the journey for us to get into the development stage of oil and gas. Now, for us today, we do have a couple of distinguished speakers that will walk us through the journey, the opportunities that are inherent within the oil and gas space. And I would like you to listen to them because they are going to converge our minds to understand how best we can position ourselves to tap into these opportunities. But before we do that, we would have a keynote address from the board chairman, but he'll definitely have to be invited by the CEO, Mr. Matthias Katamba, who will give his opening remarks. Thank you very much.
We live, we dream, we believe in things we can achieve. We walk, but still our hopes stay in the dark. But this is our time, Uganda. Time for a new agenda. Embrace our hopes, our dreams. Rise up because it's possible if you work hard on it. Possible if you never quit. It's possible. It's possible. To get there.
No dream is beyond reach because DFCU is making more possible. DFCU, with pleasure.
So good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all in the room. Thank you for making it this morning. As you know, this is an important subject. It's going to be at the center of our lives commercially over the next 5 years or so. So I'm delighted that you've made it. So our dear partners, our customers, management and staff of DFCU Bank, members of the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen, today is about possibilities. It is also about writing our own individual stories as part of Uganda's oil and gas success story. I believe that for many of us in this room, there is a sigh of relief over the fact that the wait is close to coming to an end for Uganda's long road to fast oil. I also believe that some of us in this room, the last couple of years have seen a lot of preparation leading to the moment of what will be the final investment decision, when it will be made, unlocking massive potential for businesses to take advantage of the prospects presented by Uganda's oil and gas industry. So following the signing of oil agreements between Uganda and Tanzania on April 11th, 2020, and with the final investment decision for oil production now imminent, the project execution phase is expected to kick off in the coming months with significant expenditure and therefore opportunities across the spectrum. With the planned East African crude oil pipeline, it is expected that the East African region will be transformed into a major oil player. Bringing it closer to home, Uganda is now described by the World Bank as the hottest inland exploration frontier in the world and the country to watch in the oil and gas space. But while the $3.5 billion oil deal will see the 1,443-kilometer pipeline pump Uganda's oil from the Albertine region to Tanzania's Indian Ocean in Tanga, it is important to note that about 80% of the pipeline will be on Tanzanian territory. So as a country, we must make the most of the benefits from the work that will be carried out on the 20% of the pipeline on our side. It will take businesses such as the ones in this room today to see the possibilities, to seize the possibilities, and to be part of the oil and gas success story as it evolves. As a bank whose history is intertwined with the success stories of many businesses across the different sectors in Uganda, it is our objective to provide financial solutions that will position you to fairly compete and win some of the contracts that will be available once the FID is signed. We look forward to being part of your oil and gas success story. DFCU, carrying the legacy of a development finance institution in the past, has been part of the development of a host of businesses in various sectors that we are seen to be transformational for the development of Uganda since independence. And so, this is a continuation of that story. So looking at the projections from the Energy Ministry, it is expected that the development and construction phase will generate 45,000 indirect jobs by the contractors, some of who are already in this room, and induced employment of another 105,000 people because of utilization of other services by the oil and gas sector. 57% of these are expected to be Ugandans and will yield at least $48.5 million in payments annually. According to the ministry, contracts worth $167 million out of the approximately $1.3 billion in engineering, procurement, and construction for the Tilenga and Kingfisher projects under review by the Petroleum Authority and have been ring-fenced for Ugandan companies. So you can imagine the opportunity. It is also anticipated that Ugandan businesses providing goods and services during the development and construction phase will reckon at least $4.2 billion, approximately 15 trillion, the equivalent of 28% of the total expected investments of $15 billion by the oil companies over the next 5 years. So today, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is about exploring the possibilities and having a conversation on how we can position ourselves to write our own oil and gas success stories. Some opportunities come once in a lifetime. Just like we've experienced a negative event that comes once in a lifetime, the COVID pandemic, we now are faced with an opportunity to experience a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I thank our speakers for honoring our request to join us this morning, and I look forward to many fruitful deliberations in this room and those that will continue once we leave the room. It is now my honor and pleasure to invite a man whose profile will be playing shortly, a son of the land, but also one of the most accomplished people in the oil and gas industry globally, who we are also proud to have as the chairman of the board of DFCU Bank, Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa, who is also our keynote speaker to come and address us. Thank you very much.
Our keynote speaker managed to tell business from 2012 to 2020 during the transition from exploration phase into the development phase. In this role, he led the talent team in a number of contracting negotiations with the government of Uganda, including the issuance of 5 production licenses, the favorable settlement of a major capital gains tax case, and the signing of an MOU that defined the commercial framework for Uganda's oil industry. Previously at Shell Oil, G.D. Mugerwa was the Senior Regional Advisor Sub-Saharan Africa, Shell International BV in the Netherlands. In Kenya, he was Country Chair and General Manager, Shell East Africa. He also worked for Shell Oil Products in Johannesburg as the Africa Retail Marketing Manager. He worked in Shell companies in Uganda, Ghana, South Africa, Netherlands, and the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Jimmy D. Mugerwa, who is also the board chairman, DFCU Bank.
Thank you. Thank you for those welcome. Our dear customers, distinguished guests, the CEO and management of the board, to put this forward. But let me give you a reason why you need to sit up these next few days. Our GDP as a country is $35 billion. Our budget, which Honorable Kasaija has been defending, is 44 trillion, which is about $12 billion. The project we are talking about is $15 billion. If that does not give you a reason to sit up, then I don't know what will, because it means it's going to be the largest project that Uganda has ever had. The largest project till today, I think Uganda has had, is probably Karuma or Bujagali, and you know how much that was? That was 1.2 billion. Here, we are talking about $15 billion as an investment, as a foreign direct investment into Uganda. Here is the other reason why you should wake up. We are talking of jobs, and you had Matthias summarize them, 150,000 jobs. Now, let me put it in context for you. When you hear all these soldiers, the policemen, the traffic guys, and who are seated there, you hear our soldiers and you hear our teachers combined. Combined, they don't form 150,000 jobs. So that's what we're talking about. If you think about the income that this country is going to earn, so if you see all the fuel we use in the country, we are probably using about 30 to 32,000 barrels a day. 30 to 32,000 barrels a day. Let me also help you. So Rukshan and Tim did a very good job, and they've put barrels on the table. So do you see those pipe, those peepers. That's what is a barrel. Now, a barrel is 154 liters. So we use 32,000 barrels a day. So 32,000 barrels like that. This project, which we're talking about, is going to generate 230,000 barrels a day. It's one of the best projects we're talking about today onshore in the world. And that's the reason why I'm asking you to get involved and participate as customers of DFCU. So thank you very much for the intro. So until recently I was with Tullow. I've now set up my own oil and gas consulting company, which is a Zoram Consulting Group, and that's the sign you see. So apologies for not using the DFCU logo, but I think there are enough of them. Having worked in the oil and gas industry for 30 years, I am duty-bound to tell everybody that whatever I tell you is my story. Don't make decisions based on what I tell you, but on what you believe in. So don't hold me accountable. So in terms of opportunities, what I would like to talk about is probably the brief intro, which I've just done, an overview of the industry, and you're going to hear, James is here, you're going to hear a lot about the oil and gas industry, where we are in terms of project status, and PAU and the other guys can talk about it, but also the final investment decision and what it is. Because I hear it a lot of times, and I'm also confused, as you probably, because everybody talks about it, but what does it mean? And where are we going? And where are the opportunities? They've given us a safety moment. I won't do that, but my values require that we always think about safety. So I have seen people seated on their chairs and leaning back as we're talking. Please don't do that because you can lose your back. Please sit straight up, sit firm. But I'm duty bound because of my experience to talk about safety, and don't be surprised, because oil and gas, by the way, is about safety. Okay, so the industry we're talking about. So the first really significant discovery was in about 2006. At that time, there was Energy Africa, Heritage, and a few others. Then Tullow came in about 2007. Today, Tullow Oil, the company I used to head, has left, and there are now two operators. That is Total EP, which is a French company, and CNOOC, which is the Chinese company. Now, why this is important is, I thought this was a pointer. It isn't. Is this a pointer? But the fields up is your area 1 and license area 1 and also contract area 2. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Can they see? Excuse me? Can it be seen on the screen? Oh, the screen is too bright. Okay, I'm told the screen is too bright. Okay, never mind. But if you look at Lake Albert, and the other one is Congo, and this is Uganda. So up there where you see River Nile and the Maxon Falls, those are the two blocks we're talking about, and those are now run by Total. Formerly, the lower side, which is LA2, used to be run by Tullow. And then the blocks down here, at the bottom here, are two blocks, which one side is run by CNOOC, and the other side is LA2 South, which used to be the Tullow block, but now Total has taken over. Now, the arrows point to the direction of, once the oil has been extracted, where they will go before they start the journey for the pipeline going all the way to Kabale. I just thought I should put that in perspective, because with that comes its own challenges. That particular area is one of the most beautiful areas in Uganda, if you've never been there. And I think it is important we keep reminding ourselves that while we're talking about oil, we need to do it in a sustainable manner because we're dealing with very pristine conditions. But what I wanted to talk about as well is the CapEx investments involved. And when I say CapEx, I mean the capital expenditures. So upstream has about 9 billion, the pipeline will do about 3.5 billion, and the government-sponsored refinery is about 3 billion. Of that, you also have some almost 2 billion, I think, which has been spent by, or will be spent by government in infrastructure. In terms of recoverables, and I was just talking about in terms of recoverables, so when you find oil, some of it, when you find oils, it's a resource. Some of it is you can extract, and the other you can't extract for so many reasons. It's the nature, the geology, and our estimate so far is that we can do about 1.6 billion barrels. So again, barrels, look at those papers in front of you. So we can extract 1.6 billion barrels over the 25 years. We will probably FID this project at about a billion 50 barrels, but there's a chance of enhancing the oil recovery to take it to about 1.6 billion barrels. And that's a good recovery rate by any standards, and I'm sure the gentleman from PAU will tell you that. I did talk about the operatorships between the two, but there is the Uganda National Oil that is going to back in at about 15%. Why do I mention this? Initially, it's Total 66 and CNOOC has 33 after Total taking over the tallow blocks. The future post-FID is CNOOC backing in at 15%. Why do I mention this? Most of the times when you hear most people talk, they are thinking about contracts with Total and CNOOC. They are contracts with CNOOC. And CNOOC is the commercial arm for government. So don't ignore them. If you see the adverts in the papers as customers, please run after them as you're running after Total and CNOOC. The other aspect of the project, so as I said, this is a mega project by world standards. It is a big project by today's standards. For four parts, you've got your upstream, you've got your midstream, and you've got your downstream, which is a refinery, and then there are also a lot of other various sectors which you need to get involved in. So it is not just about extracting oil from the ground, it is not just about transporting oil in the pipeline, nor is it about just putting oil on the sea. They are banking services. So Matthias told you what we do. Godfrey Mundua will tell you our capability as DFCU Bank, how we can help you. We understand the business and we are there to help you. You've got legal services. There are a lot of legal companies. These are contracts. Oil and gas is about contracts. And then you've got your logistics and aviation. But the thing I want to ask you to do as customers of the bank, and I know it is not, we don't normally do it, use consultants. These are big projects. You're going to be dealing with international business people. The idea that you can go in and stand in front of, and if Adrian allows me to use him as an example, because he's from Baker Hughes, the idea that you, Katik, will go in front of Adrian to negotiate an international business. Katik can, because he's done it, he's international. But I don't know who to give as an example. I can't see any local contractor here. But the idea that Jimmy Mgera, in my local capacity, I am going to negotiate with Adrian, Baker Hughes, who's got 1,000 lawyers in the US backing him, and I go by myself, is futile. It is the reason for the disaster we have had with many of the oil companies which started in the exploration phase, because they were not able to negotiate back-to-back contracts. So use consultants, use the legal teams, use the bankers, use the transaction advisors if you're going to negotiate with these people. So that's the project. I'm conscious that other people might talk about it, so I've kind of perused through it. But if you are to take away anything, mega project, 4 sectors, midstream, upstream, downstream, and other services, and CNOOC is a key player. Don't ignore them. They've got 15%. So they are half of CNOOC. In terms of project status to date, we've all had the 11th Feb. I think we achieved a big thing. The new president of Tanzania flew in on the 11th of April, and they signed these 3 mega agreements. They signed the shareholders' agreements for the pipeline. How are the shareholders going to cooperate? The people who are going to be investors in the pipeline. They signed the transport and tariff agreements. What is going to be the costs and what are going to be the terms of using the pipeline to transport your oil, their oil, to the sea. And that's an important one as well. Then they also endorsed some of the host government agreements. I think in the case of Uganda, they signed. And that really set us up well. And I know a lot of people, especially the press, I was listening to the press, were talking about FID, that we signed an FID. That was not an FID. And an FID is not signed like that, by the way. What was signed was mega, was important, but it was to ensure that we have a project framework that allows us to commence the project. There are, however, and you've heard in the newspapers, that there are some banks and their financing discussions taking place. So project financing, as an example, there are discussions on how the East African crude oil pipeline is going to be financed. That's what we mean by EOCOP. And then the other one, which was also good news, is that it set the stage for the operators, that is CNOOC, Total, and CNOOC, to start considering how do we award the main construction contracts. And the main construction contracts, you've got your engineering, procurement, and construction commissioning services, which project has got to be given, the EPC contractor. You've got your drilling and well engineering packages. You've got the EOCOP. So that set the framework to do that. I don't know whether the agreements have been signed, but at least they are now in a good space to do that. And of course, we know that land has been acquired in the area where my friend Honorable Stephen comes from, and I hope he'll be able to talk about that. But also, the environment, social, and impact assessment has been done. I did show you the first picture and told you how pristine, how important, how environmentally sensitive that area is. There are people. So if you're going to do a project of this size, a mega world project, you need to ensure that you've done the impact assessments on the environment or even on the people who stay in that area. So that's what has happened, and that is where we are on the project. I think FID is not yet concluded, but I think the international companies are working towards concluding the FID. And it is important we put that in perspective, because a lot of people say that day we signed an FID. But maybe the question needs to be then, what is an FID? And the example I normally give on an FID is when you have a house, you build, you have a plot, you buy a plot, you get an architect, they do the plans, you move and get somebody to do the construction, the BOQs, the quantity surveyor, and thereafter, even you get the family, the kids tell you, I want a blue room, I want a pink room, depending on the sex of the daughter or the kid, the sex of the child, and then you then have it at you as a person who's going to fight. You even go to the bankers sometimes, and they negotiate the loan rate. Godfrey Mundua gives you a rate and says, you'll mortgage this. This will be your mortgage rate. But you need to make the decision. And at 3 a.m., you wake up and say, you know what, guys? I have the plans, I have the surveys, I have all the permits from City Council, the bank has accepted, I am ready to go. And in the morning, you tell your wife, I have gone to sign, or you tell your husband, I have gone to sign. Then you've taken your final investment decision. That's exactly what we're talking about when we talk about. So, the final investment decision is, in a way, is a public proclamation that the project will go forward. And it is done in the boardroom of the project owners. It's very important that we kind of understand that. And by the time it is done, the sponsors, the regulators, the people who are backing it have done their front-end engineering studies or designs, and they're comfortable that this can be done. Example, we've got a project where 70% of the oil in Maxon Falls, 70% of the oil is in Maxon Falls. Again, because of the environmental sensitivity and being conscious, they are designing how do you ensure that the oil is processed across the river. So there is a design to get the pipes under River Nile and take it and process it outside the national park. So that has been looked at. So the beauty with our project actually here is people have spent so much time studying all these things. And a lot of studies have been done. We know which animals come when and how the project will affect them. That has been done. We know how much water will be required. Today you've had the war going on between Egypt and Ethiopia. It's still a war of words. But even when we start the project, we've had to do consultation with the Nile Basin authorities to tell them this is how much water will be extracted from Lake Albert as a result of this project. So all those studies have been done. The permits have been issued. The government has issued the ESIA. The governments have done the roads. So everything that is required has been done. And the contracts have been signed, just I've been talking about. So the due diligence by the sponsors, financial backers, to give them an assurance to get to an FID has been done. The other thing which the FID does, so once the FID has been taken, that signals a couple of things. So it signals that you can actually go ahead, and EPC means engineering, procurement, and construction, that you can actually go ahead and award. That the procurement can start, that you can start hiring the workers, that you can start, that the construction can begin. That is when you have taken FID. Before that, you can't. And it's huge expenditures as well. And to give you an example, in many big projects, it is normally pre-FID expenditure is less than 10%. And thereafter, after post-FID expenditure is 90%. So when we talk about the 15 billion project, we have actually not started spending money on this project. Money is going to be spent post-FID. So do your numbers. 90% of 15 billion is almost 13 billion shillings, $13 billion, which are yet to be done. So, and once FID has been taken, that's when you hand it over to the project team. And that's where you guys, a lot of you people, start playing a role. Because the project is going to attract, it's going to require subcontractors. It's going to require different kind of people to participate in the project. There are a lot of business opportunities. Because why are we telling you this? We're telling you this because there are business opportunities. And in 2013, the oil companies did a study in which they looked at what are all those services or industries which are required and ranked them in terms of benefits on the left-hand side. So from low benefits, and then the ones that give high benefits. They also ranked them in terms of complexity. The more complex and the easy to do. And the things in yellow, surprise, surprise, are easy to do, and the benefits is not as high. On the other hand, you look at the red ones, the petrochemicals, your fertilizer plants, your pipe steels, your heavy machinery, those are high benefits, but also very complex. And then you have all these areas in green, which easy to do, but also they give you benefits. So in terms of promoting the project, the areas in green are probably things a lot of Ugandan companies can do. And if you look carefully, probably each of you lies somewhere there. But it's not to say that the ones in blue, engineering consultants, say oil field services, drilling equipment, are not doable. They are doable, they are complex, but you probably need to partner with guys who understand the businesses. Even these, I think you do need to partner. But the study did not just stop there. It went further to try and see, if you look at it from a supply and demand perspective, what is the gap? How many security, site safety as an example, we just looked at that and said, how many security guards do you need in terms of, and said so many. What is the current supply? Surprise, surprise, we have enough Saracen, we have enough security groups. So that area doesn't have a gap. But then you also looked at some of the others, like transport and logistics. How many cars do we have? How many trucks do we have? How many of those trucks pass the health and safety for oil companies? Surprise, surprise, there was a gap. What does that mean? That's an opportunity. So the guys who have been listening to this gospel that the oil companies have been preaching have actually started to invest. And I am hoping that you are part of that group. So, I mean, this slide is available. I think it's on the PAU website. If you go to the PAU website, you can actually go beyond that. The study had pages and pages and pages, and each industry was looked at for benefit, for supply, for gaps, and for what is easy to do. I borrowed this slide from PAU, and I thought it's a beautiful slide because it summarizes some of the other opportunities, and after FID where the opportunities are going to be. So in agriculture, you've got commercial agriculture that's required. You'll need cold storage. You'll need food processing. So in housing, you'll need housing. You'll need construction. In tourism, you'll need hotels because people are going to be coming. You'll need hospitality. Civil works, for those of you who are contractors. In health, you are going to need hospitals. You're going to need medical insurance. You're going to need medical infrastructure. Because bear in mind, we are bringing in experts. I think at a point, one of those areas, the estimate was about 5,000 workers. If you have 5,000 workers on a site, you need hospitals, and God forbid some of those guys have American insurances, then you need first-class clinics, which we may not have. And that's an opportunity. So something with transport. I saw Isaac here. So some of your trucks, Isaac, the pipeline I think is 18 feet, if I get it correctly. Where is Isaac? I saw him around. Yes, Isaac. I don't think you've got a truck that can carry 18 feet. So what are you going to do? So you need to think about that. That means your 12-feet truck doesn't work. But the reason we're talking about this is we're talking about opportunities. We are saying you have an opportunity and let's use them. Here's an example of the trucks, and again, these are courtesy of PAU. But to give you a feel, the materials estimated is 7 million tons. 7 million tons. You will require 600 trucks per month. I don't think we have those trucks in Kampala. And another 350 trucks. So you require 1,000 trucks. Again, let me put it in context for you. A truck is what, 30 tons? Katik and Isaac, I think you guys are more experienced in this. Is it 30 tons we're talking about? So, if you have 7 million tons, what does that mean? You need to be able to carry, you need trucks to be able to carry those, and the trucks need to be certified. That's an opportunity. And talk to your bankers, talk to DFCU to see, how can you help me? How can you support me into this? Where do I get the partners to work with to be able to participate in this business? And as I said, this project is moving. FID, by the time we finish FID, 6 months later, these contracts need to start. Beyond that, it will be too late for this project and probably too early for the next one. So, here's another one. And again, this is courtesy of a slide from the joint ventures. So, as an example, there are packages. This is pre-drilling civil work. So before they start drilling, you'll have to do well pads and all that, and infield roads. So a well pad is where we put, say, the Christmas tree, and you're able to extract the oil. So that's a typical well pad. The opportunity for this, and below is a rig. But the opportunity for this is that the good news is that using PAU, a number of these works, like infield roads, have been reserved for Ugandan companies. So this is the opportunity to look out for those companies that want to work in Uganda, and they're looking for partners. Then there will be subcontractors for the materials, aggregate, steel, cement. You will have to supply those construction equipment. You will have to provide consultancy services. So all these are opportunities for our customers, the SMEs. Learn what we can do, how we can help you. Let's work together, and so what you can do has been reserved for Ugandans to put up those camps. And not only that, but they're also subcontractors. So somebody needs to supply the aggregate, somebody needs to supply the cement, somebody needs to supply the construction material, somebody needs to do the engineering designs. So what I'm saying, or what am I saying? What I'm saying is that take advantage of the opportunity. Take advantage of the opportunity. Get ready. Because this is a big, big, big opportunity. And you can look at the overall contracting scheme. So at the top is the operator, and then there are packages which we call super bundles. So you've got drilling activities, you've got enabling infrastructure, some of the things I've just shown you. Then you've got facilities like camps, and you've got shared services like logistics and all that. Below that are subcontractors. And then, even if you assumed that the drilling activities will go to the big oil companies, because if you remember that graph I showed you, too difficult and too complex. Those drilling activities, the drilling contractor will require subcontractors. And those subcontractors are not going to come from China, for heaven's sake. They are not going to come from France. They are going to be Ugandan companies. So even at this level of the subcontractor, the level below, in drilling activities and enabling infrastructure in the facilities, they have been reserved for Ugandan companies through the regulations of PAU. So what do you need to do? Ensure that you are registered. Ensure that you are registered on the National Supply Database. How many of you have been registered on the National Supply Database? Just by show of hands. Godfrey, look. No, please keep your hands up. James, just turn around. Just stand up and stand around and see. So I think you still have some work to sell the supplier database. You are not going, he will tell you, but let me not preempt his story. You are not going to supply oil and gas companies unless you're on his database. But again, just to put it more in perspective, just the amount of sand that will be required. Sand, cement, gravel. 20,000 tons of cement. How much cement do we use in a year? Who roughly knows? Cementers, your name is Cement, so do you know how much cement we use in a year? But anyway, whatever the number, 20,000 tons is colossal. It's a lot of cement. This is just one project. Look at the amount of gravel. Look at the amount of sand. Those CNOOC trucks take 12 tons. So these are 1 million CNOOC trucks. Truckloads. Again, just to put it in perspective for you. So what am I saying? I'm saying this is just Kingfisher. And you can also go down to the next one and you look similar things. In fact, Tilenga is even twice as much. Look at the amount of marram, sand that is required. Look at the amount of crushed stones and aggregates. These are not going to be imported by sea from Brazil. These things are going to come from here. And you, as a contractor, can participate in this because this is easy and this has been ring-fenced for Ugandans. But for you to do that, it means you need to understand how do these IOCs, how do the oil companies work? What are their procurement processes? What do I need to do to get ready? And as an example, I think this is a slide that if you attended the Chamber of Mines, you know, one of the slides where they showed the expression of interest. So there are legal requirements. Please understand them. You have to be registered on the National Supply Database. You need to have manpower. You need to have available resources. So it's not briefcase businesses. You need to have the relevant health and safety awareness. You need to have the financial capability. And that is where we play a part as DFCU, because come and we work together, and Godfrey will share that with you. And then there are commitments on national content. You need to understand those. So if you are going to be a player, if you're going to participate, you need to ensure that you get to understand these minimum requirements. And these, I am not a professor to talk about these. These things are available on the website. I got this from a website, so you can do the same thing and be ready. The other one is, how do you win the proposal? Again, use the consultants, use your transactional advisors, use your legal people, but understand how the business works. So you've got to have the technical capability. So you've got to have your health and safety. They will ask for the past experience, the delivery method, some of the technical deviations. Then you've got some of the unpriced commercials, which is your national content plan, your financial status. Have you been bankrupt? Probably you have a problem. Are you insured? Do you have tax clearance from URA? What is your source of funding? And if you have a joint venture, what is the structure? Is your joint venture registered? Then you've got the legal and regulatory. So you require different permits to do business. And these are things you do every day, but for oil and gas, the beauty is that through a lot of these websites of the partners, PAU, you can get a lot of this information. And also then, of course, for you to win the tender, your price needs to be right. So this is not your time to become Bill Gates and think that you're going to be quoting billions. It is a competitive bid. Yeah? Yeah, so I think I've spoken enough, but maybe to try and summarize what is it that I've been saying. What have I told you? So I have told you that FID is a big breakthrough in oil and gas projects. In fact, the term FID is, I think you'll only find it in oil and gas and minerals. A lot of the other industries use a different term. But the final investment decision is a major breakthrough. And be ready once it happens, because once it happens, the key has started. And you do need to understand that there are a lot of stakeholders. It's a multi-billion stake at play here. Take time, it takes money, and takes a lot of coordination for you to ensure that you have FID. But in return as well, be ready to participate and have your decks in a row. And you need to find the right partners. So this is your opportunity to talk to your consultants, to your lawyers, to your bank. And DFCU is in for this. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you success in making more possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa, the board chairman, DFCU Bank Limited. We would now like to hear from Mr. James Musheure Rujoki, representing the Petroleum Authority.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Musheure Rujoki, and I work as a Senior National Content Officer in charge of contracts at the PAU. I'm here to represent the Executive Director, Mr. Ernest Rubondo, who is not being able to make it. The beauty with presenting after Mr. Mugerwa, a 32-year experienced man in the industry, is that he has broken down my work and made it easy. So if my presentation was to take 20 minutes, it will take about 10, because he's been so articulate, he's been so detailed, he has taken his time to give you all the information. I'm just making 10 years in the industry, and I was here thinking, do I still have other 20 years to reach this man's level of being articulate? So thank you very much, Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa, for breaking it down. And I'll go and hit the points and maybe buttress some of the things you could not have mentioned. Well, mine will be about the introduction. I'll tell you about who we are, the Petroleum Authority. He has talked about the status of the sector, so I'll add on a few things. He has talked about opportunities, so I'll add on a few things, and hopefully conclude. Who are we? We were set up by the Petroleum Exploration and Development Act of 2013 as the regulators. So this act said the oil and gas industry is coming, you need to have a regulator to make sure the laws are being followed and international best practices are being used. We are only part of the big puzzle of the oil industry. There are 3 government institutions taking forward the oil and gas industry. One of them is the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, and this is our mother ministry. The second is the Uganda National Oil Company. And where most people, I am sure there are some people in this room who say, but what is the difference between CNOOC and PAU? Most people would not understand that. I would use an example of UTL and UCC. So CNOOC is the commercial arm and will handle the business elements on behalf of government. PAU, so that means it's like UTL. PAU is the whipper, the one who will whip you into line to make sure that you're following the laws and the regulations. So just like UCC, the Petroleum Authority is meant to be the regulator. So that's the basic difference. We don't deal in commercial things, but we make sure we regulate the sector to the best possible way we can. What is the status and what are the key projects? And Mr. Jimmy has talked about this, though he talked mainly about the discovered or those projects that are already for commercialization. But we also have projects that are in the phase that these other projects have gone through, the exploration phase. And we have 2 other licensees who got licenses in 2017. Petroleum from Australia and Oranto from Nigeria. These are trying to find more oil, just like the way Talo did, Heritage did, and passed on to CNOOC and CNOOC. These are doing serious work in the graben. It is important to note that only 10% of the graben, which is suspected to have oil, has been licensed. So our discoveries are in less than 10% of that graben. This means that there is potential, huge potential, for Uganda to make more and more discoveries, that this project we are talking about of 230,000 barrels per day can take us more years and also increase on our production per day. So there are those companies that have licenses. But also in 2019, the minister launched another licensing round. So the first competitive one was the one that led to Oranto and Ama. Now we are about to announce new licensees who are coming to also get more blocks. There are 5 blocks that were advertised, and we have shortlisted about 5 companies, and therefore we'll have new players in the industry trying to explore. So don't look at the industry only on the projects that have been commercialized. But right now the heat and the talk is about projects that have been commercialized, and that's the upstream projects for both Total and CNOOC. Mr. Mugera talked about this. The ones up in green, the big circle, is Tilenga project being taken forward by Total, and the one down is Kingfisher, a much smaller one, being taken forward by CNOOC. The Tilenga one will have about 190 to 200,000 barrels of production per day. The Kingfisher will have about 40,000 barrels of production per day, times the 150-something liters that we've been talked about. Now, for you to commercialize these discoveries, you can either decide to refine all the crude here, meet our domestic demand of 32,000 barrels, or export all the crude. Government chose a 2-strategy approach. One is to develop a refinery that will refine about 60,000 barrels of crude in Uganda to meet the 32,000 barrel demand, which is also increasing, and also supply part of the region, but also have a pipeline that will take the remainder of the crude. And therefore, the major projects are coming from these 2. For you to have this, you need support infrastructure. And if you've been to Hoima, you can see the work that is ongoing in that place. We have 600 kilometers of roads being done now, all of them at contracting and implementation stage. Tarmacking and leveling all those roads is ongoing. I think it's the biggest road network that will ever be done in Uganda at once. We have an international airport, which is over 40% underway, that has been that is being set up in Hoima, in Kabale.
This is going to be the second. The vision is that as planes fly in to bring equipment, to bring materials, to bring people to work, they are flying out to take some of the products that we have from Uganda. Is it agriculture products? Have we made them reach the industry standards? Can we export them? That is the vision for that airport. And they're in the 29 square kilometers that was acquired by government, that will have a refinery, will have petrochemical and storage facilities, it will have the crude storage facilities, it will have the logistics warehouse. It's going to be a mini city. Government acquired 29 square kilometers, and we're hoping for another kind of city. If you've gone to oil-rich places, you'll see the kind of city that Hoima will be in those cities when you visit them. So we hope that there's going to be a lot of change in that. So the support infrastructure to develop this project is on the way. So the 15 billion barrels that Mr. Mugera talked about are here. The 9 billion for developing the oil fields, that is Kilenga and Kingfisher, putting up the central processing facilities. There are 3 to 4 billion barrels for the refinery, the 3.5 for the crude pipeline, and the $1 billion that has been invested in the airport, in the parks, and everything. $15 billion. He talked about our GDP, talked about our biggest project of 1.2 billion. That's 10 times. This is what it means. It means we have revenues now on the big projects, but also when they start producing, government is expected to earn about over $2 billion per year in revenues, oil revenues. I think, I don't know how much we collect in taxes. It's around that estimate in terms of how much do we collect from taxes. So these projects are not only bringing in capex and a lot of capital now, but they're also bringing in money in future in terms of cash flows. What are the opportunities and what are the drivers? He has already conceptualized this. And we are at the edge when the engineering, procurement, and construction starts. You expect a lot of activity. He talked about people coming in. For example, we'll have about 15,000 people in the camps for all the projects, because you'll have about 5,000 for Tilenga, about 3,000 for CNOOC, and then you have people along the pipeline and other people. You estimate about 10,000 to 15,000 people staying in the camps, being fed, being dressed, being done for everything, because the rigs, the people have to do work day in, day out. You have over 100,000 people moving into the Graben, whether to bring material, whether to deliver goods, whether to do some services in there. They need services. In total, you'll have about 1 million people doing some activities related to oil and gas in that area. This is a period, a small window of 3 to 5 years of construction. He talked about the numbers of employment. You can see over 160,000 people to be employed, and therefore this means big. These are opportunities, and this slide is where I want most of the people to pay attention. We've been hearing contact oil companies, contact Tullow, contact CNOOC, contact Total. But the contracting strategy is as simple as this. There will be main contracts that will be offered by the main players, that is CNOOC and Total. Those what I called tier 1 contractors. Those contracts are not many. We expect about 45 or so contracts in that category of tier 1. For example, in the blue column, those are tier 1 contractors of Total. You'll have someone setting up access roads, someone doing the Bugungu airstrip, someone doing the well pads, someone doing the engineering, EPC, someone doing the directional drilling, wellheads, upper completion, main logistics, construction and water management, and others. Those are the main contractors, and those are the ones that are taking the big cake. The unfortunate. For Kingfisher, you can see it. You have EPC1, and I see the CNOOC partner here. We'll talk about more of that, which is about site preparation. You have the CPF construction under EPC2, feeder line, rigs, drill bits. These are the main contractors. And for the ECOP, they are as well as this, above the ground construction, pipeline laying, supply of line pipe, electronic instrumentation and telecommunication and security. Now, the unfortunate bit is that these contracts are all at award stage. Most of them have been submitted to PAU for approval. And these are prerequisites for FID. The beauty about it is that these people don't do the work alone. They do get tier 2 contractors. And that's why you find that most of the Ugandan companies, most of the local companies fall under tier 2 contractors. Now, tier 1 contractor will come, for example, if it is site clearance that has been awarded, that it's about to start for Tilenga. He'll come and say, I am working with this and this and this person in this, in taking forward this project. We are observing local content, we are getting construction material through this. These are the people who expressed the interest, these are the people who we chose with the lowest price. For security, we are working with this. For water supply, so tier 2 contractors, as companies, that is where your cake is, mostly, given the stage where we've reached. So it is important that you get well versed, and the moment these recommendations are approved, these tier 1 contractors will be known to you, they will hold conferences, and now it's the time to engage them to be able to provide the supply of these. Of course, there will be other contracts that come in, but mostly those are the ones. So it's also important to note that the tier 2 contractors will have tier 3 because they may not necessarily do the work alone. So if I'm doing the camp management, I'll have someone to do the catering. That catering person will have someone to supply the goods for agriculture. So do not lose out on tier 2 and say that we're only going to follow tier 1. Please also follow tier 2 because there are so many businesses that we've seen that are coming under tier 2. This is a slide that Mr. Mugera has, and I will not go to it again. The opportunities are immense in all sectors, from housing to agriculture and to tourism to civils. And he gave examples. I think this is a 5,000 man camp. For example, if the Tilenga camp will have 5,000 people, it will inquire monthly supplies of about 23,000 trays of eggs, 320 sacks of potatoes, pineapples, cabbages. All these are going to be supplied. But please do not go to Total and say we are going to supply you this. There is a tier 1 contractor who is do camp management and logistics, who will be announced, who will you go to and he said, listen, you're going to do the cooking, let's give you the tomatoes. So that's why you need to direct your site to. And he talked about logistics. I will not go into it. There is health sector, opportunities, medical facilities, insurance, evacuation, fitness and gym. You cannot enter the field unless you have a health certificate. So those are opportunities for you to set up and know. Construction and engineering, he gave statistics. He gave for Kingfisher mainly, which are there, but also Tilenga has figures as well. You can see the amounts required. These are a lot. We've been talking to some business people, and he says, me, I'm looking for someone who has trucks, and I'll be able to take all of them up, because the work and the moving and looking at this is going to be immense for the companies. Of course, there are others. If you don't look at that and you still want to play at tier 1, there are people who are doing environmental services. There are people doing capacity and skills development services. You see, we need so many people. We need certified people. We need certified welders. We need certified scaffolders. We need drillers. The skills training still has gaps. We have petrochemical industries, the plan under UNOC to set up a fertilizer, chemical, pharmaceutical, plastics is still there, and UNOC is looking for partners. You have general civil works, you have geophysical and seismic surveys. I told you that we have players coming in, new licenses. Those are virgin areas if you still want to be at tier 1. There's construction and fabrication, there's petroleum laboratory services, there's non-destructive testing. We can sit here and list. The beauty is these opportunities are available on our website. What do you need to know and what do you need to do? 1, government has struggled to put in place the legal framework that will facilitate participation of Ugandan companies. And this legal framework says, 1, preference is given to Ugandan companies. Ugandan companies are those companies that are incorporated in Uganda and adding value to Uganda. So if you're roofings, if you're where and you're setting up something that is adding value, you are categorized as that. And where there is no Ugandan company, the joint venture is required. That means priority is first to Ugandan. If Ugandan is not possible, joint venture. But we also take cognizance of the fact that these joint ventures may not be possible. To be honestly speaking, where we sit at a contracts approval, we look at contracts amounts and they are big. The simple contracts are $40 million. Now, if you ask a Ugandan company that you have to have a joint venture with a simple contract of $40 million, they will ask him for a participation interest of $20 million. I wonder how many companies we have that can make that contribution to take part in that. So we are also realizing that fact that even those contracts that are simple for Ugandans to do, financial muscle has become a constraint in one way or another. And the joint venture may not be possible. We try and promote it as much as possible where we can. Where it's not possible, we go under the category 3. Well, you're giving the contract to a non-Ugandan company, but let him subcontract pieces and pieces of that to a Ugandan company. So if it's 100 million, let someone who can do 3 million take it. Let someone who can do 5. Let someone who can do 6. So that Ugandans are also participating. So we do a 3-layer kind of regulation. Priority to Ugandan, where not possible joint venture, where not possible subcontracting. So that's why we say we encourage unbundling. There are supplier engagements, quarterly, held by these companies that you need to know about. And they invite people and they advertise. I've seen adverts running in papers. CNOOC is here. They've had, throughout the whole of last year, they had supplier engagements in 4 quarters. When COVID came in, it was on TV and it was on webinars. They give information in those conferences, and it's every year. Get to know, get to attend, know the requirements, know the standards. There is also in bidding, every licensee and contractor, 10% is given to national content. That means that as you do bidding, you'll have technical of 60, maybe HSC of 30 and 10. So you're also being evaluated at what is your proposal in terms of national content. And this national content includes national content and community content. In our regulation, what are you doing for the community? What are your plans? And all the submissions they make, they have to have national and community content. We have encouraged them to reduce scope of work. There's a provision in the law where it says that where the companies are close to each other in prices, and you have passed technical, the one with the high of prices is 5%. Let's say you're higher than the company 5% in terms of bid evaluation, but you have national content score which is higher. The one with the highest national content score is given the award. Government has also ring-fenced these, logistics, security, all these 16 services to be provided by Ugandan companies. And you're supposed to participate. It's unfortunate that where we're seated, some of these adverts run, and I don't know if it's because of bid security or something, we have found that Ugandan companies do not even submit bids. Yet clearly, this is ring-fenced for Ugandans. and they've been advertised. So, lastly, we have set up a database. The Petroleum Authority runs a national supplier database. This database gives us all the companies that are to participate in the sector, so that when they come and say, there is no one who can do security in Uganda, we are saying, no, we have a database of A, B, C, D, who are security companies, who are qualified with us, who have the skills, consult them. So I encourage you to register on the database. The law is clear. You cannot provide goods, works, or services for the oil and gas industry unless you're registered on the National Supplier Database. When Mr. Jimmy Mugera asked people who are registered, and I saw less than 20%, I was worried. Because where I was sitting, we thought the adverts, the engagements, the TV, we thought people knew about the database. But unfortunately, we have to go back and resit and come with a different kind of campaign to make sure that people register. But it is simple. Visit www.pau.go.ug, go under national content, go to National Supplier Database, and apply. It's an online process. You fill in details, put your certificate of incorporation, tax clearance, NSF clearance, and a letter showing that you have a bank account. We take through 1 or 2 days to verify, and then you're qualified. It's unfortunate that in the past, companies have wanted to do business. I'll give an example. Still, it is CNOOC. I think they wanted to hire, they had an engagement with Uganda manufacturers, and they wanted to hire their whole UMA. And these people are not registered on the database. And it is in the law. So as a regulator, we cannot encourage you to break the law. You're coming to provide services, and Richard said, but this contract cannot be approved. The company is not registered on the database. And they had to take, I think, the conference to a hotel who was registered. So please make sure you register. And we've started seeing these level 1 contractors, the bids that are coming up for approval, they come with national content commitments, and they highlight the people they may use with. And we see that there is non-compliance still on the database. It will be unfortunate for you to go through this haggling process, and they tell you, unfortunately, we cannot give you a tier 2 contract or tier 3 because you're not registered on the database. So please try and register. This is the process that I talked about. It's on our website. Those are the few requirements. You can register as an entity or as an individual if you're providing consultancy, if you're providing accommodation, houses. So you have 2 processes you can go through. Yes, in conclusion, the oil and gas sector is broadening. I would call that if we're at a train station that has delayed for all these years, the train is taking off now. FID is imminent, because with the moment we have signed the major agreements that we had about, the moment the contracts are approved and awarded, then FID will have no more obstacles. You're encouraged to register on the database. Preparations have been ongoing. Keep preparing, keep going on the website, checking for all this information. The pie is big enough. I think that should be emphasized. The pie is big enough if you are ready. Do not be left out, because the train of the oil is in the 3 to 4 years window where there will be a lot of business, because I don't see us investing in another pipeline, in another refinery to bring in such amounts of money. So you have a window to participate in. So ladies and gentlemen, do not be left behind. Make sure you get aware and participate in the sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James, for providing that detailed perspective. I'm for sure certain there's going to be a lot of questions regarding how people could be able to participate within this space. Please park them. We will have a Q&A session much later on. We started quite late, but in the interest of time, I'll now call on the next speaker, the area MP for Bulisa, Honorable Birahwa Mukitale Stephen, to just come forward and also share with us the opportunities that are
Our
in the
next
region that
speaker
you're coming
is
from.
Honorable Birahwa Mukitale Adieri Stephen, an economist and businessman, and also the area member of parliament for Bulisa County. Now, he represents Bulisa County in Bulisa District, which is one of the Albertine grabbing areas that sit on rich deposits of oil and gas in the Western Rift Valley. The district that is home to more than 60 oil wells has seen oil construction companies like Tullow Uganda and Total run operations for over 5 years since its creation. As a businessman involved in procurement supply chains, transport and logistics, education and philanthropy, Honorable Birahwa is all too aware of the opportunities available downstream. There is no better person than Honorable Birahwa Mukitale Adieri Stephen to speak on the subject of tapping opportunities downstream.
Distinguished participants, let me start by appreciating the management of DFCU Bank for making more possible by arranging this very important engagement. And you are privileged to have a frontliner for the last many years when we have been struggling to make this industry reality, none other than your chairman, Jimmy Mugera, my friend. I think they deserve a big hand clap. The oil and gas industry, the quest for Uganda to join the club of the oil-producing countries has been a tall order. 15 years ago, indeed, there was raised expectations, and a lot of time has been lost. But we must say that in the last few months, a lot of hope has been regained when we saw the joint venture partners led by Total CNOOC, our own head of state, and our neighbor from Tanzania, who has given us the longest part of the pipeline, signed the deal that really resurrected all the hopes. And I think that's why DFCU is calling us now. The English have a saying which catches a worm. Petroleum Authority has just been saying that the train is in locomotion. Actually, in here, there are those who have already benefited and partook of the, if you want, the welcome champagne or the wine and the juice or the starters. So there are those companies here which have already enjoyed part of the exploration phase. You are aware over 3.8 billion was expended then, but only about 20% was secured by Ugandans. Now, deliberately at Parliament, government has made a law, the Petroleum Act 2013. We have put local content at 48% target. I think that point must be understood. At this phase of the $15 billion project, which I know will be plus, I'm not an advocate of cost overrun, but I'm saying it will be plus. In the next 3, 4, 5 to possibly 7 years, we have a tall order to partake the 48%. We in Parliament and NRM government committed that Ugandans must be ring-fenced. So Petroleum Authority is operationalizing that law. Now, we've not just lost time. We actually, as a country, have taken advantage of the delay. It has been a blessing in disguise. Because yes, at that time, the land was not acquired in Bulisa. So the land has already been acquired. The international airport is ready to go. If you have any emergency international cargo to bring in the next 3-4 months, you can actually, the cargo planes can land. The good roads have been made. I have been away. We lost our dear one, the late Justice Kosi Makato. But I've come from Bulisa to come for this function. But before, it would be a risk, because you wouldn't know how to come through from the Rift Valley to Hoima. There is now, the roads come with a bridge. The bridge at Para is a game changer. Jimmy Mugerwa used to bring consignments from Bulisa to Tangi, just south of Pakwach, for 2 days, a convoy of 2 days, running from Bulisa, Biso, through Kinyara Sugar Works, Masindi, Kigumba, back to, but right now, across the bridge, it's only 25 minutes journey, because it's only 26 kilometers anyway. So the infrastructure has been done. UNRWA has done its part. We had challenges to do with the permits. The good environmental impact social studies were done, and that is a step ahead. So I would rather say that this country took advantage of the delay to run a lot of miles, so we have covered a lot of ground in as far as that's concerned. By the way, as we speak, there are companies, their settlement action plans, which had been halted, they are now giving sensitization. I hope DFCU, along the pipeline corridor, Telenga and CNOOC, you have people to sensitize my people where they are going to put their money. I hope you don't only want those who want loans, but also those who want to save. Because we are now, next week, they are beginning to sensitize all those project-affected persons so that they can receive deposits. Quite some hundreds over 100 billion is going for in the Uganda side of the pipeline, the Telenga, the interconnection pipes, and the well pads themselves. So there's already that area. I think it is important that as private sector, you choose where to make decisions right now. Do you want to come in just because of the ECOP? And even if the bigger part of the project of the ECOP is in Tanzania, we are an East African community. So you can partner with companies down in Tanzania and work together. But also for the 1 million tons, most of the cargo is coming from Mombasa, and procurement, logistics, supply chain is my background. There is no company in Uganda which can operate without a network in Mombasa at the port. So it's also important that you have that network from the coast, so that when they are here, you can do business. Now, in effect, the signature the President appended with the joint ventures and Tanzania has made the Ugandan, what was originally called the landlocked, really land-linked. We now have an infrastructure to the coast, and therefore the business is feasible. Now, what we are waiting for, the final investment decision, which an expert has already explained, I don't have to labor, and which is also simultaneous with the EPC contractor, is an international clearance, even at the level of the IFC of the World Bank, that there is a feasible project in the hinterland of Uganda, in the land-linked Uganda, if I can use that word. So there is also direct foreign investment. It's like a whistle has been blown. So everybody is now looking at Uganda as an investment destination. And I think we should be proud as citizens of this country for that. Now, beyond just this project, there's going to be business after the oil crude is out, the petrochemical industries. Why should that big international airport with those cargo planes, which I am privileged to have had business earlier before I came to Parliament, why should they go empty? Because in terms of shipping and freight forwarding, the EPC contractor is going to hire these planes, return journey, is paid to come in and to go back because they are not expecting cargo. So should you have anything to export, whether it's an avocado, whether it is a pineapple, you are actually going to get a good deal. So we can take advantage of that. Now, let me also encourage, to add on the point which was earlier made, that we have a government commercial arm called CNOOC, which we made by law on top of the Petroleum Authority. That is responsible for state participation. State participation in business means that working with CNOOC, I would actually encourage DFCU Bank and NSSF, whom I know is a shareholder, to get interested possibly in being responsible for almost, because 5 square miles, I'm informed, is ring-fenced for the refinery. So the 24 could actually be developed as industrial park. We are now looking for money at the Ministry of Finance to finance that industrial park. That's the most viable and feasible project we have in the country. Because the petrochemical industry is automatic the moment the crude is out. The pellets are required everywhere in the world. So why can't DFCU, working with our own NSSF, buy in and be able to make that possible? Because whereas the oil is finite, whereas the development phase, because the $15 billion we are talking about is a development phase, but there is business after the development phase. The oil will flow for possibly 35 years. More areas are being explored, but also the oil phenomena in Uganda is a Rift Valley phenomena, which God was not very mean. He has also given it to DRC, our neighbor, and also given it to South Sudan. So the infrastructure Uganda has taken a lot of time to put in place is going to make it very easy. I am less than 15 kilometers to DRC. So the connection of the DRC oil to Uganda is going to be possibly a 6 months project if they appended signatures. And they are members of the East African community. They are joining the East African community. Equally, along the Nile from Sudan, if we agree. So there is business, the immediate one, in the 3, 4, 5 to 7 years of the development phase, but there is the real business of the many years we are going to produce oil. And if we work as East Africans, we can actually even do the East African Great Lakes refinery, therefore working with our neighbors. So it will also go into not just the crude, but also the business of the refined oil when the refinery comes in place. I was expecting at the end of this program, possibly at the beginning, the power which I fought so much to form and I've been fighting so much to fund was actually going to have a desk for the supplier database at this meeting. And I would like to request my good friend in charge of national content. You saw how decimal we are performing in terms of those who are on the. So can the exercise start today? You know, Africans, we have this, we have to touch. So this online thing may not work for everybody. So you should have a desk, if it is possible. By the end, you should be having somebody giving some brochures and some details, talking to people, you know, how to make their companies qualify. I also, the CEO, I want to thank you so much. Bwana Matthias Katamba, I was also looking forward to the launching of the DFCU incubation. Some time back, when the front-end engineering exercise was going on, we had a very good presentation. I remember Chairman came with a lady and a gentleman in Vulisa, and we thought that our SMEs and others are going to get incubation. Because the issues of partnership, joint ventures, will require some bit of capacity building. Not everybody thinks that he will work with another company. But the challenge, as Power has told you, the volumes of these contracts are big. You may not chew it alone. Whether you want to supply the chicken, eggs, you need some standards, you need some good quantity, and therefore partnerships, joint ventures, and mergers is the way to go. So the bank would do that. For me, coming from procurement and logistics background, I already understand that we need some one-stop center business hubs in form of what we call the internal container depots. Because not every consignment will be required on arrival at the site, on the well pad, at the CPF, or even for the pipeline. The pipeline transport is going to be much easier because basically you deliver right from Hoima up to Mutukula border. So you don't require any single big location of consolidating cargo. But for the Tilenga project, which is the biggest, you need a one-stop center less than 12, 15 kilometers, so that if a truck has arrived from delivering cargo from overseas, you don't have to keep a truck parking until the contractor on site would want that equipment. It's only logical that consignments are put down. So you need some crane lifting facilities, you need some container depots, there will be some shipper-owned containers which may not even have to go back. So I think those arrangements would work, and it would be cheaper if you, again, partner and consolidate and have a one-stop center. At that one-stop center, there will be the required checks. You know, as a young man, I would be a convoy leader in a chase car from Mombasa to Kampala, to Auzi, Congo, to Rwanda, to Kisangani. I did that as a young man. So, and for oil and gas, the standards for health, safety, and environment, the checkpoints, the hours of movement are going to be very strict. So it's important as you leave Kampala, what is your next stop point? Possibly this reminds me, not because I'm from Bunyoro, the DFCU CEO, we had hopes that you're coming to Masindi. So we hope we shall have, and that same facility should be a fueling station, checking the tires, allow the drivers to have time to rest, get a quick meal. So that kind of business parks, a one-stop center, is going to be very important for this kind of business. The other area is already we have had also a lot of capacity building in taking advantage of the delay. There are companies which have been doing skilling, even on the government side, but also on the private sector. But I think it's also important that when the project is when the EPC contractor is on site, and as you have rightly been told, the EPC contractor is going to have a lot of subcontractors, the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Now, when they are on site, they must have some semblance of retooling, some semblance of making them up the task. And therefore, another area of human resource development, some apprenticeship, some sort, is going to be required in the region to make sure. I think the total housing deficit arising out of the numbers we'll be given in terms of jobs in the next 7 years could go to about 250,000 units. Is that a good business for mortgages? If we are going to talk of so many subcontractors in the tier 2 and 3, are we looking at contract financing? All these are options you need to look into. Yes, now it has also been mentioned, Total, CNOOC, the EPC contractor who is coming, they are not startups. they have been at this business for long. In procurement is what we call proven performance. They are not going to look for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. They already have people they have been working with in the running projects and the projects they've executed before. So for them, they are ahead of our local companies. They already have information, some letter of intent that they have contracts. And this is for power. Whereas the international oil company, Jimmy Mugera knows this but may not disclose this to you, in their practice, they have already talked to the companies which are most likely coming here. But you have not told our companies. Because I have that background. You have not informed ours. So that's why our people, having had a challenge before, have been shy. I want to turn that problem into an advantage. Yes, some people burnt their fingers, 2011, 12, 13, when we expected first the NFID and it not happen. But the reason why I spent some 4 minutes trying to tell you what has been achieved, the roads are there, you don't even need to go many kilometers, the international airport is there, the bridge is there, is that this time it is abundantly clear that the business is for real. So it's time to take a decision. It's time for power to make sure that all these companies have joined the supply database. It's time for our banks to seriously think on incubation. And the FID also gives us opportunity to possibly work with our partners to get international lines of credit. Because with that kind of business coming, Uganda, the volume of money required, it may not only come in the UGX financing. Possibly it's an opportunity for some of our clients who have dollar account to start looking at partners like FMO who could give us lines of credit, cheaper, affordable. Because those companies which are coming from abroad, they have quite cheap money, and we should look into that. As I come to the conclusion, I would like to appeal to our private sector. Don't embarrass us in Parliament and the President who supported the 48% local content target. Because at one time, there were people who were pushing, say, no, we have no capacity, we don't have the money, we can't make it. But the President assented to that bill into law without any resistance. A lot of other bills have suffered. So that shows the commitment of that target, and therefore we need to prepare to partake of that very important. In Bulisa, as I conclude, we have solved most of the earlier problems of land acquisition. Not every business will require to go into land acquisition. One, if you succeed to make business parks working with DFCU, get 5 acres, 10 acres for camps, if that is required. But since the first business is 5 to 7 years, you don't have to buy land. You could do rentals, you could do some subleases. Now, let me also speak to the oil and gas policy 2008. This country intends to use the finite oil and gas windfall to diversify the economy, to invest in other areas with good roads and a beautiful environment Chairman Jimmy Mugera talked about. We now become even a much better tourism destination. Uganda, for 3 years running, was given as the best tourism destination. By then, we didn't have the tarmac roads. Now we have them. And the power is also moving along all these roads and water. So it means that you can also invest in tourism. I've also mentioned we are immediate neighbors of DRC. DRC has joined the East African community. So you can also think of business across the border to DRC. And the Lake Albert and the River Nile is navigable to Semuliki, You can actually get agriculture products from Semliki, from Bundibugyo, from Kanungu. You go up to Nimule, Sudan, without coming to Kampala in the traffic jam. So investment is required in water transport, in barges, in some of these steamers. So that's the business for a lifetime. I am not talking about the finite, the development phase 3-4 years, or just talking about when the oil of Uganda is running. I'm talking of investment of lifetime. So let's look at this area. Uganda as an investment destination. Let's look at opportunities beyond Ugandan boundary. And it's good, we are doing very well as a country, feeding our neighbors, supplying them the basic goods. So this international airport, this industrial park, could actually be a place to take your exports very near across DRC, take your exports to Sudan, and your business, as DFCU says, making more possible, can actually prosper that level. I want to thank sincerely DFCU management, both the board and staff, for putting this together, and I hope that at the close of this meeting, Petroleum Authority is going to inform how we are going to easily access the supplier days process of getting. They are coming. That's very good. And then that the bank, after raising a lot of expectation, after raising the appetite, the incubation should start immediately. I wish you very good business in the oil and gas industry. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable, for taking us through the opportunities in the area of your watch, Bulisa and beyond. And I think there's nothing that you haven't exhausted within that area. We have been privileged to be in the company of one of the IOCs by the names of CNOOC, and we would now want to hear from them. They've been represented by Mr. Matthew Shaligonza, who will also be in position to tell us how do we get closer to those kind of contracts. I'm for sure certain that most of you in the business community, this is the discussion that you would probably get your right ear onto. Matthew, could you please?
Introducing our next speaker, Matthew Chaligonza, National Content Manager, CNOOC Uganda Limited. Passionate about local content and the participation of Ugandans in the oil and gas sector, Matthew Chaligonza is a chartered procurement specialist and project management professional with extensive knowledge and experience in project management, procurement and logistics, finance, and local content management. He represents CNOOC Uganda Limited, which is committed to national content development and participation to ensure sustainable development of the oil and gas industry. This morning, he shares with us insights into appropriately positioning for the supply of goods and services in the oil and gas sector. Introducing our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Malik. The staff, management, directors, and customers of DFCU Bank, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank DFCU Bank for inviting CNOOC to be part of this well-organized event. I'll take us through the opportunities for the supply of goods and services in the oil and gas sector. And I would like to say the previous speakers, including Mr. Jimmy Mugera, my brother James, and my other uncle, Mr. Mukitale, have done a very good job and have made my work very easy. So I'm going to not take a lot of your time. So my presentation will go through the brief introduction about the Lake Albert Oil and Gas Development Project, which has already been talked about extensively. I'll talk about briefly about the oil and gas value chain, which has already been well elaborated and articulated by Mr. Mugerwa. I'll talk about the Kingfisher project work packages and opportunities. Then lastly, I'll talk about what CNOOC is doing to strengthen SMEs in Uganda. So as you can see there, that is the framework. The Lake Albert Oil and Gas Development Project. It has already been talked about. Allow me to only talk about Kingfisher project, which is a 40,000 barrels of oil per day central processing facility design. We shall have 4 well pads with 20 oil producer wells and 11 water injection wells. And we'll have a 46 to 50 kilometer feeder line that will connect the oil field Kingfisher to the export hub at Kabale, which is in brief, the brief about the project, the Kingfisher project. The petroleum value chain, which is the midstream, upstream, and downstream, has already been well articulated and elaborated by Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa. Allow me not to spend a lot of time on it, but if I may elaborate a little bit, the upstream is about exploration, development, production, and decommissioning, and this is what CNOOC is involved in largely. And we're also involved in the midstream, which is transportation, refining, and gas processing. And we are also here together with our joint venture partners. And the downstream, these are the petrol stations or where the final distribution points are. This is not our area here in Uganda. Despite the fact that we do it elsewhere in the world, here we're only doing upstream and midstream. So this is very well articulated by both Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa and my brother James. The oil and gas value chain has different services, and the services that are therein are in 3 main categories. As you can see, in the inner circle has what we call specialist services. These are highly technical services that Jimmy Mugerwa talked about that I believe the Ugandan SMEs or Ugandans might not be able to partake of. But however, we are seeing over the years some few Ugandans that have come on board that are offering some of these more complex but very highly beneficial services. A few of them are coming on board. Then the other second circle, which is the middle circle, has direct services. These also, Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa slightly elaborated on them, which the people here and companies here, I believe, majority must be belonging to this group, which includes things like construction companies, spare parts, civil works, electricals, in-field transportation, freight services, environmental services, field construction, and others. So those are the direct services that you can actually be able to partake of. Then the other circle that the majority of the companies in Uganda will belong to are those that offer the indirect services. So these will be companies like HR companies, catering, office supplies, telecoms, hotel and accommodation, camps, IT, medical, and the like. All these were well elaborated by Mr. Mugerwa. And here also, most of the majority of you lie here. And as James elaborated, there are 16 services that belong to these 3 groups, as you can see here, that are exclusively reserved for Ugandan companies. It's only in the event that no Ugandan company is able to participate or do the work, that we go ahead and bring on board an expatriate, but as we encourage a joint venture first. So, yeah, that's a bit of the background. So allow me to take you now to the work packages, Kingfisher work packages, and the opportunities therein. As you can see, we shall have, as Kingfisher, we shall have PC1, which stands for Procurement and Construction 1. In this PC1, the engineering has already been done, and this is largely going to be civil works, and this will definitely be done by Ugandan. We shall also have EPC2, EPC3, EPC4, and drilling packages and resettlement house construction. The opportunities here are largely on the procurement of materials, equipment, and supply of construction of well pads 1, 2, 3, infield roads, supply base, permanent camp, safety check station, CPF, infield roads. There will be a temporary camp and the 50-kilometer feeder line. And the work here that is reserved for Ugandans includes subcontracts for detailed engineering design, the supply of goods, of materials like aggregate, steel, bitumen, and the others. There will also be supply of construction equipment. Here, DFCU must be having a sort of equipment or lease kind of arrangement that they can work with you to ensure that you partake in this kind of thing. There will also be sections of the work that will be subcontracted, including conductor pipe installation and construction supervision consultancy. Now, why am I saying this? Like Jimmy Mugerwa and Alex, James earlier said, all the major EPCs are at contract signing stage. So if you haven't already been involved in the procurement process, you'll only have a chance to be subcontracted as a tier 2 contractor, which also means that you will also still have a chance to actually partake and benefit from these, the oil and gas in Uganda. So what are the other opportunities? For example, at the refinery. At the refinery, you will find that there is an industrial park that the government of Uganda has secured. And here you will find heavy downstream industries like petrochemical, manufacturing, fertilizer, agro products, industrial gases, LPG, and other petroleum products. There's also enabling infrastructure that is being constructed at the moment, like the roads Mr. Mukitale talked about, electricity, water supply, waste management, and the like. There is also something that Mr. Mukitale hinted on, the Honorable, about residential and hospitality industry, where accommodation will be needed. And here I would like to guide our suppliers that all these workers, the direct workers that are going to be employed by the joint venture partners or the international oil companies are going to stay in camps. So don't rush to the Albertine Graben and build houses, thinking you're going to house these workers, the direct workers. So if you are to build and construct accommodation, you target the direct and indirect, and those people that are in transit, for example, the drivers, truck drivers, the thousands of truck drivers, they are telling you that will be staying in hotels and the like. So that is a clarification. There would also be an opportunity for tourism, given the roads have been made and the airport is available, so easing the travel. And there will also be opportunities for health and education that Mr. Mugerwa and James also elaborated very well. There is also an opportunity for trade and logistics, where warehousing and storage, freight and forwarding, these are services that will complement or support the oil and gas operations. So all these are anchored around the airport, refinery, and the other upstream developments. So what is how do we pre-qualify vendors as CNOOC or as joint venture partners? Pre-qualification goes through this. Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa clearly elaborated this in brief. We go through different stages, which are three. One is the legal, the other is the technical, and the commercial. So from this evaluation, we derive a final bidder list, which is actually invited to present. You are invited to present your request for proposal. So what do we look at in the legal? In the legal, we look at the vendor information legal existent, compliance with NSSF, NSD registration, which James talked about. You must be registered on the supplier database. URA, tax clearance, if you have any disputes, litigation, ethics, and the like. Then on the technical evaluation, we look at the QHSE, your QHSE management system, if you have the relevant certifications, if you have the required manpower, if you have a workload that is manageable, you can have the competency, but when you are stretched, when you have like 5 other contracts you are running, and you are unable, due to that excessive workload and limited capacity. So on the technical bit, we look at such things. Then on the financial, we look at your financial status. We look at your policies and procedures. You look, very importantly, we look at your financing sources. This is where DFCU comes in. Do you have a reliable financial source? Do you have strong relationship with a bank or another financial institution that is going to provide financing? We don't want to start a project and in the middle you are unable to deliver because you don't have the finance. So we also look at your equipment and software, and we look at your organizational structure, employment structure, investment and value addition. This is on the commercial. So after looking at these 3 major components, we develop a bidder list that is then invited to provide a request for an RFP. So with invitation to tender, what do we look for? Here, as I've just told you, we look at the technical, which is your past experience, available resources, and the like. We look at the unpriced commercial. There's the unpriced commercial where we look at the national content plan. This is something you should allow me to talk about, especially the Ugandan companies. When we request you for a national content plan, some Ugandan companies just write a sentence that we are 100% Ugandan. That's not a national content plan. And from the 10 marks that James talked about that you are supposed to score, you might get 5. That is a donation. We might donate you some 5. But you need to put you can be a Ugandan company, but you go and subcontract an international company to do 90% or 95% of the work. So that would not be national content. Yet we can have an international company that can subcontract 80% of the work, and that 80% value is retained in country. So this is very key for Ugandan companies. You should actually start writing proper national content plans. And national content plans are simple. We are looking at how many Ugandans you're going to employ, how many Ugandan companies you're going to subcontract. Is there going to be any technology transfer? Are you going to train Ugandans? These are things, and we well in our RFP documents, we articulate this very well to guide you and show you that this is what you have to do. But some Ugandan companies still go ahead and say we are 100% Ugandan. That should stop. Then we look at the commercial deviations, financial status, and insurance, tax clearance, non-bankruptcy, your sources of financing, if you're joint venturing or subcontracting. Then we look at the legal. This also takes back to what Mr. Mugerwa said, you need legal advice, you need consultants, you need people who know these things to help you. So we look at legal and regulatory requirements, where we look at your permits, work permits, if you have any disputes, and any bribery and corruption history, regulatory compliance, physical office, if there is any conflict of interest. So finally, we look at the pricing. So we look at pricing last when you have all complied with all these other aspects of a winning proposal. So we look at your price, and we look at the rate and schedules. We look at tax applicability and payment terms. These are milestones and all that. So in brief, those are, without wasting a lot of time, those are some of the things we look at as IOCs for you to be able to actually do business with us. So what is CNOOC doing to strengthen SMEs in Uganda? In 2020, just like CNOOC, just like all the other IOCs, has been involved in training and certification of welders. This is something we are doing to ensure that our Ugandans partake in the works of both the ECOP, East African Crude Oil Pipeline, and the feeder lines, where there's a lot of welding that needs certification that will be done. We trained 30. We're actually training 30 since 2017, every year as CNOOC, and this is in addition to what our other joint venture partners, Total, are doing, and other development partners. We have also started the training and licensing of heavy goods vehicle drivers. Like I told you, we need about 1,000 trucks that will be on the road every month or so. So after a study was done in 2013 by the joint venture partners, the industrial baseline survey, it was discovered that there was a gap, and we are training 70 heavy goods vehicle drivers, training and certifying to international standards every year as CNOOC. Our other joint venture partners, Total, are also doing the same, and other development partners also adding on that pool, so that we have a good number of drivers to be able to take up jobs when you, the investors, buy the trucks. So we're also doing training of trainers, and last year alone we trained 84 trainers. These are teachers from UPIC, Uganda Petroleum Institute in Kigumba, and we trained 64 from Kigumba and 20 from UTC Kichwamba. We are also, as James told you, we have a mandatory quarterly national engagement, quarterly national content supply development engagements. These, you should look out for these. This is where we give you all the information you need to actually partake of these opportunities. We've also, as CNOOC, and I think also UNOC, have formed partnership, and we have signed an MOU with the Stanbic Business Incubator, which is in support of enterprise development initiatives. And this is where my brothers at DFCU, I won't overemphasize, like Mr. Mukitale said, you need to, I think some time back you had something that was called the Business Accelerator Program, which was more or less similar to incubation. So I would encourage you to restart that and call up on us as IOCs to be able to give you a hand. We shall also possibly have MOUs and support you with expatriates that can come and offer trainings for free as training and skills development for these Ugandan businesses. So, and what are we going to do this year as CNOOC this year? We are going to have the quarterly engagements that are statutory. These will be virtual due to COVID, possibly on TVs or on online e-conferencing. And we are also going to offer enterprise development training services. This is a program that will have at least 150 SMEs trained and all developed in enterprise development for at least 3 to 4 weeks. We are looking at developing at least a minimum of 50 in Kampala and another 100 in the Albertine region districts. So we are also going to train 70 heavy goods vehicle drivers. This is scheduled to start between April, then it will run up to September. We are also going to train another TTT, Train the Teacher program, which will see another 42 teachers from the different Albertine VTIs, vocational training institutions, like St. Simon, like Kiema in Masindi, like St. Joseph's in Kikube, like Nile Vocation Institute in Hoima, and the others, where we'll train their teachers to be able to train other students and certify them to international standards. We're also going to have welders training and certification from 2G to 6G of 120 welders. That is 60 in 2G and 3G. Then another 60 in 4G, 5G, and 6G coded welding. And this will get international certification to take part in the welding works that or employment on ECOP and the Tilenga and CNOOC feeder lines. We shall also have a training of 60 ECITB. These are certifications in civil works that are actually very necessary for oil and gas. So in a nutshell, that is what we plan for you this year. And I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for that quite detailed and explicit presentation. In my view, I think CNOOC is doing a lot, especially for the suppliers, but also all the presentations are able to point us into a direction of doing something more than what we are doing. And this cuts across, whether it's DFCU, PAU, the clients themselves. So let's get ourselves to think much deeper on what we need to do to better ourselves with these opportunities being presented in oil and gas. Just to take note, we have a desk at the back end where POU is registering companies that would like to be part of the national database. Thank you very much, James, for doing that immediately after Honorable talked about it. Of course, in all that we are talking about, you cannot be able to move forward unless there is financing for yourselves. And this is where DFCU comes in. We are again privileged to have Godfrey Mundua, who is the head of corporate, to walk us through what it is that DFCU shall be able to deliver, prepare to deliver, and how we would like to partner with you along your journey of success. Godfrey, could you please come?
As the head of corporate banking at DFCU, and now that we have seen the possibilities, let's talk about financing them.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, my name is Godfrey. I think the introduction was sufficient. Allow me to say thank you to our board chair. I think he has just moved out a bit. We also have our other chairperson, Honorable Eli Karuhanga, who's following the event virtually. I also want to thank the presenters who have already presented before me. I think the discussion is very, very enriching from a DFC perspective. And I think coming as a banker at this point, specifically when we have looked through the opportunities, I think the mindset is about how do we get in, isn't it? So I think that was a good stage for me. I just want to say one thing. I was talking to one of our board people, and he asked me the meaning of the word epiphany, which I thought would equally be a good thing, especially when we're talking about FID. If you go to church, and I think if you talk about epiphany, it's talking about revelation. Yeah? It's talking about how Jesus appeared to the Gentiles. But in the English word, it's talking about sudden manifestation. So I think there is likelihood of a major event that is going to be transformational in many aspects. From a banker's perspective, from your own perspective, and I think as a country at large, many things are going to happen. I think all this is exciting to everybody. My discussion is going to be simple. I don't want to talk again about what many people have talked about. I think the opportunities, we all understand them. We know where we are looking at, whether we want to be a tier 1 contractor, we want to be a tier 2 contractor, we want to be a tier 3 contractor, and I'm sure there are going to be other tiers, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6. But I think everybody is looking at where do I put myself? From DFCU, and I think when we are talking about such an event, it's important for us to understand from a financer's perspective, how do you prepare yourself such that you and your bank are able to help you, yeah? You're able to win the contract, you're able to finance it, and you're able to deliver on it. The last thing I think we'll be talking about is what exactly is DFCU doing along all this? So for starters, I think if you look at where the opportunities are, I'm not going to go through them because you have seen them. But the question is, I think there are various things as suppliers that you're looking at in terms of goods, in terms of services, where you think you're going to have your participation in. But I think the question is, are you ready in terms of capital, in terms of capacity building, in terms of just looking at what are the health and safety requirements? Chairman did talk about this, that in the oil and gas industry, the standard requirements are very, very high. So if you're going to be looking at this, I think it's important for you to understand and say, in terms of preparation, this is what I'm going to be doing. As a company, this is what I need to have. And if I'm looking at capital, how do I raise capital to finance these opportunities? These are the things that we need to be looking at. And I think from a DFC perspective, that's what we're going to be talking about. The question is, are you ready for these opportunities? Yeah. When chairman asked people to raise up their hands, and I looked back, I saw very few people. So in terms of preparedness, actually, the few who raised up their hands are the ones who seem to be ready. So many people are not yet ready. So what do we need to do? I think a discussion about how are you set up. One, legally, you must have a legal status, that should be able to contract. Because if you are, my name is Godfrey Mundua. If it is Mundua who's applying for this, am I ready as a person? Do I need to form a company? Do I need to get into JV? I think legally it's important for each of you to just understand how do you prepare yourself. The second thing, of course, if you have set up a company, you have registered in the National Supply Database, you've been given a contract, and you want financing, the bank is going to be looking at, are you able to pay back? You see, when I give you money, I expect you to pay back money, yeah? So the question of cash flows becomes important. And these cash flows really, for these kind of contracts, it's going to be your ability to perform, whether do you have sufficient cash to put in so that you can perform. But of course, you come to a bank because you don't have sufficient cash. But the bank wants to understand the whole thing. So in terms of financial preparedness, in terms of having the right books of accounts, in terms of just understanding what it takes, it's important for the bank. So the bank will be keen to look at that. And the entire general setup of a company, in terms of how many employees do you have, are these employees trained, will these employees pass the test of standards as required by the industry? I think that is equally important. So what is our role as a bank in doing all this? Now, for starters, I think if you look at the entire value chain, it has been explained here, we need equal to about 15 billion. $15 billion is mind-boggling, isn't it? And this $15 billion, if you look at the entire value chain, right from where the work starts, some works are already going on. Those who were involved in the resettlement action plans, I know there are some companies that have already been borrowing, and actually, as DFCU have been financing some of them, because we know that, as the works continue, they need to have funding so that they can continue. These works are going to continue, and I think if you go back into opportunities which are there, the first works that are going to be there is from the moment of FID, there will be sufficient quantum of goods that need to be brought into the country. There are going to be many people who are going to be coming into the country. These people will need to be settled somewhere. They need transport for moving. They need accommodation. And all these pose opportunities that we have seen. Housing specifically for the foreign expatriates who come in. Housing for the Ugandans. We talked about 5,000 camp. So if you're going to have a 5,000 camp, probably putting up 5,000 units of housing is a significant amount of money. Now, that's where the bank comes in. So I think, one, in broad terms, what you need to do at this time and what you need to be certain about is, I think for the requirements of the local Ugandans, the banks are in a position to finance those requirements. Number one, from a DFCU perspective, we have a very strong value proposition. We have been working with the local content, and we have been doing real estate. And I think real estate, if you're talking about housing camps, if you're talking about putting up more decent accommodation for the foreign expatriates, those are things that many of you have been doing. So I think it is easier for you to speak to DFCU at this point and say, this is my contract, this is what I'm looking at, and in terms of preparedness, this is how much I'm looking at. I think those kind of discussions will start now. But of course, you might need capital for many other things. We talked about logistics and construction. I think for those who are doing the oil roads, I was talking to one of our customers here who was already involved in that. The roads that you have where either you have direct contract with the IOC or you have a contract as a tier 3, a tier 4 through subcontracts, I think those still you can come to the bank and then we discuss what is required. So this discussion for me, I think to summarize it all, is in terms of where the opportunities and what can the bank do for you. So specifically for contractors, I think where you're looking for capital in terms of, you have a contract, you need a working capital because your certificates have not been paid. You want the bank to discount those certificates. The bank will be happy to do that. And even when you want to apply, because your employer will need some bids, guarantees from you, your employer will need guarantees either in terms of performance or advance payment guarantees. The bank is in a position to help you. The bank is in a position to cover those requirements. At DFCU, the other bit is, of course, we're not only looking at the direct contracting that you're going to have. Some of you are in the manufacturing sector. And if you look at the requirements in terms of materials, much as I think we saw a list of what will be required in terms of steel, what will be required in terms of cement, what will be required in terms of sand, gravel, etc. But I think if you look beyond that, because you're going to have settlements of people, you're going to have vehicles moving, there are going to be many other products, there are going to be many other materials which are required. So the question that brings, that comes to anyone's mind is going to be, if you're forecasting for your business in the next 3 years, your requirements are actually going to get bigger. Even if you're not a direct player in the oil and gas industry today, your requirements are going to get bigger. So as we speak and we talk about all this, I think the issue of capital is so critical. So if you are going to set up, you want to enhance your capacity in terms of projects. If you're going to open up a quarry, you have a direct contract, and you need to mine from some of these oil areas, you need project financing facilities. If you're going to be setting up bigger projects that need project financing facilities, you need the bank to come in. So from a DFCU perspective, I think in terms of raising capital, whether it's for a project, whether it's from a working capital perspective, we can be looking at that. From a project side, some of these projects are going to be greenfield projects. meaning that they have not been done before. You're going to do them for the first time. Or you're doing as a company or as an individual for the first time. It's greenfield, but for as long as the project terms are linked to oil, well managed, we can be looking at that. The other thing, of course, is as you get these projects, there will be different requirements in terms of from the demands of the work that you're doing, from the demands of your employer, whether it is a letter of credit, whether it is in terms of, you run out of cash as you're doing the work, then you need the bank to come in to support your working capital, to enhance your working capital, to just make sure that, your cash flows remain sufficient for you to support activities you're doing. The bank will be happy to do that. The other thing that we are going to do as a DFCU bank is capacity building. I think I'm happy that CNOOC is requesting us to relaunch what we had started early, which we called Business Accelerator. In the Business Accelerator, it's about capacity building. DFCU already has Agricultural Development Center, where we are working with the thousands of farmers to help them develop their capacity to increase productivity of their production. So we want to build on that to enhance that and then have an incubation center that will specifically work with SMEs and our local corporates so that we can discuss different sectors, including oil and gas. And I think to Petroleum Authority of Uganda and the CNOOC, this is already in discussions and will be very, very soon coming to you and see how we can work together to make sure that the majority of Ugandans benefit from this. The other bit is also from, in terms of capacity development. I think it is important that Ugandans continuously get information about what is happening. I know today we have set up a desk here that those who have not registered are going to be registering on the National Supplier Database. I will leave our contacts at the end of the session. We will also have a desk at DFCU Bank for our customers here. If you have any problems, DFCU Bank can help you to make sure that you can register on the National Supplier Database. The other bit I could quickly talk about is about linkages. The importance of these events that we're having, and one thing that DFCU Bank can do for you is, as a bank, we are a center of information. We have information about what is happening in the various sectors of the economy. We have information about what is happening in the oil and gas sector. So I think as a customer who wants to participate in this, if you don't get this information from Petroleum Authority of Uganda, or you can't get it from the IOCs, you can actually walk to the bank and have this information from the bank. So one thing is, all of you have RMs in the bank. You have relationship managers who are direct contacts in the bank. So we'll use these direct contacts to make sure that, so if you look at right from the contract sourcing, how do I win the contract? And once I get the contract, how do I execute it? And how do I make sure that I actually complete this job? Yeah? Along all this value chain, you need the bank to be present with you. So if you look at the contract sourcing, from a DFC perspective, we have done two things. One, we know it is sometimes the requirements are urgent. There's no time for you to go and prepare, look for security, and do this and that. So we actually offer free, or what I would call unsecured bids. Yeah? We offer up to 500 million sellings of unsecured bids. Then if the contract value is higher than that, and the bid requirement is higher, the bank may discuss security, but up to 3 billion, we may only take about 10%, collateral. So I think in terms of collateral requirement, we're very, very flexible. So we do this to make sure that you are able to qualify and actually bid for bigger jobs. Because most times bid requirements are between 5 to 10%. So a 5%, if I'm doing up to 3 billion for you, actually can make you do quite a sizable job. And the second thing also, at the point of winning the contracts, all employers definitely will require you to produce a performance guarantee and an advance payment guarantee. Likewise, from a DFC perspective, because these jobs are big, we can go up to 30% of collateral requirement. Yeah. So what that means for you is that if the job is actually big, yeah, if the job is big and you can only source up to 30% of collateral, you're able to qualify for that. Yeah. And then at the point of contract winning, of course, once you've won the contract, there's an element of management of your cash flows. If you don't have sufficient cash flows, we can discount your invoices. We can do many things. And one thing I want to state here clearly is, we have been in these discussions many times. And I think many people have asked the banks that once I have a contract from a strong oil company, that contract should be bankable. Indeed, it's bankable, I agree. Because the expectation of the bank is that the IOC is a strong company. Yeah, it's actually a AAA rated company. But of course, if you're going to be a tier 3, a tier 4 company, which means the contract goes through so many hands. Now, the flow of money from one hand to another may bring in a few other issues. So how do we treat that? That should not still worry you. So for as long as there is a very strong contract, we can always look around the contract and see how can we structure something for you as a customer. Because the whole aim is at the end of it all, there's a contract, there's a job to be done, you have a capacity, and the bank is not worried about the risk that you can fail to perform on that job. So you can do that. One of the solutions that I would like to talk about here from DFCU, which I think is very exciting, specifically to the construction companies and the manufacturing, is our asset financing solution. Now, we have seen that you are going to be requiring close to about 600 trucks per month. Now, 600 trucks, that is quite sizable. Just trying to find, today a tractor head goes for about 100,000 euros if you go for Actros. Yeah? So if you're talking about 600 trucks, the amount of capital that is required for you to achieve 600 trucks is quite colossal. But of course, it's going to be difficult for you to be thinking about how can I get this contract to be financed. So for as long as you have a contract where you will need assets, and those assets are going to do a job where they're going to be cash flows. For as long as cash flows are certain from the contract perspective, and then you have this equipment that you want to buy, this equipment can act as collateral. Yeah? So the bank can, you will only have to raise about 20%, then the bank can raise the 80%. So through our asset financing and through our leasing proposition, you can acquire these equipments with only providing about 20% capital, and then the bank can do the 80% for you. Now, this is exciting for two reasons. You need to understand. One, the requirement for equipment, and specifically for small contractors, is going to be enormous. And the question of, in addition to what you're doing today, for you to raise the capital, actually to have this equipment is going to be very, very difficult. So the discussion of whether do you want to buy and own, do you want to lease from the bank, do you want to run an operating lease? With an operating lease, the bank only agrees with you how much you can pay per month. Yeah? The equipment essentially doesn't sit on your balance sheet. The issues of maintenance, the issues of repairs and so on will be taken care of the bank. But of course, the bank will have an agreement with the supplier of these equipments, and the supplier will take care of that. So DFCU Bank is moving to do both finance lease and operating lease. So in terms of acquiring, raising money, raising capital to make sure that you have sufficient capacity to execute on some of these contracts, DFCU can help you do that. The other thing that we also need to talk about this is these equipments, once you buy and import them, the requirements for insurance, the requirement for tax payments are quite significant. Now, with leasing, the bank takes care of tax. Yeah? And this tax will be amortized over a period of time, so you don't have to pay it at the start. You'll be paying it as you pay back this facility to the bank. Then number two is from the perspective of insurance. The bank can do for you insurance premium financing. So the insurance premium financing, actually helps your cash flows. So essentially, you will only look for about 20% to finance the actual value of that equipment. So when the bank takes care of insurance, the bank takes care of tax, and a vehicle that costs today in the market about 100,000, that has an element of all this, actually, your actual input will be far less than 20%. So I think it is important for you to see, in your planning, and then saying, you see, if I want to get 100 trucks, how can I finance it? If you speak to us, then we can be able to structure and see what we can do. Yes, we have talked about what DFCU can do, but I would just like to summarize it. I think we talked about, given the opportunities, given the size of all these opportunities, I think the requirements in terms of financing are huge. And indeed, it's true. If you speak to most of the local content suppliers here, the biggest concern that everybody has is financing. If I get this contract, how do I finance it? But I've told you, the fact is the banks are liquid. If you have seen the balance sheet of most of the banks, and if you have seen the balance sheet of DFCU, we are sufficiently capitalized, and we have sufficient headroom to still fund a number of these projects, for as long as the projects meet the terms and conditions. Number one, if you are going to be doing a large project, and this project needs sufficient capital because it's a new project, it's a greenfield, or you want to expand, and you want to move into venture, because when we talked about Kabale, where there's going to be a petrochemical industry, where there's going to be an airport, a number of things are going to be set up there. If you want to set up an industry in that place, because you have a direct linkage to supply, or you have a direct linkage to service the requirements of the oil and gas value chain, the bank can look at that. And I think those discussions might be difficult, and sometimes they appear so far because you have not put your mind to it. But if you speak to us, we can break this down in terms of what is it? Are you able to get the contract? So how much does this need, and what can the bank do? So I think I would be happy if such discussions, you start them with us. The second thing, I've talked about asset financing and leasing. And I think specifically for people who are doing waste management, those equipments that you need for waste management, the bank can finance them through leasing. Those who are going to be expanding their factories, we do some of the plants, the lines that you have in your factories, we can do leasing facilities for that. If you're going to be importing vehicles because you're involved in a haulage business, the bank can do that for you. If you're going to be involved in a lifting or earth-moving equipment and you need sufficient capital, the bank can do that for you. And with our asset financing, I think the advantage that you have is you save money. Number one, because you won't be able to need additional capital to pay taxes up front. You won't need money to pay insurance up front. Overall, your capital requirement in terms of funding, the bank can take care of that. We are also looking at other value chains. We have a very strong proposition for agriculture. So for those who are also involved in agribusiness, we can support. And for those who are involved in trade business, your business is merely to buy and supply. And for as long as you have a contract, you have supplied, you have a receivable, you have a delivery note that I've supplied, so and so, the bank can look at that. So I think all in all I can say from a DFC perspective is we're ready to work with you. And I think we have looked across the value chain. The biggest strength that we have is you, who is the local content. Local content, we are talking about companies registered here in Uganda. So we can support you in many ways. It doesn't mean that we cannot work with the IOCs. I know many of you are going to be getting contracts, either from the upstream or in the midstream. Not much has been done downstream. But of course, in the upstream, whether with Tilenga, whether with the ECOP, the bank is willing to look at some of those contracts. Lastly, just to show you, these partners are from our asset finance unit. We work with a number of these suppliers who are all based in Uganda. The advantage is if you're working with the bank, the discussions are easy. I won't say that you can get a discount, but I'm sure if you go to any of these suppliers and say that you're working with the DFCU bank and they'd like to get these terms, they'll be willing to talk to you and we can have a meeting and then we can execute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Godfrey. That has been a mouthful of products and services that DFCU is able to offer you. But please, what is more important is let's continue with the engagements with the respective relationship managers. There's quite reasonable skill set, knowledge, and abilities for those ladies and gentlemen to give you the right solutions. So now we're going to go to the next stage where we will have a Q&A session. I would like to ask the presenters to kindly take up. Okay, Q&A. Yeah. If you could just kindly take to the podium so that we could open up the conversation to the floor. Our presenters have really done well to try and dissect what is happening in oil and gas. The Petroleum Authority, we're quite appreciative of the fact that you have now set up a desk for people to enroll and register onto the database. And maybe just for the audience, during the exploration stage, the 6.5 billion barrels were discovered at only 3.8 billion US dollars. Now, if you do a comparison, the industrial average of oil discovery per barrel is about 5, but theirs came to $1 per barrel. I think they have done quite well in terms of safeguarding the interests of Ugandans. So we really appreciate you for that. Yes, as the setup continues, there's a team of ladies and gentlemen moving around with microphones. There's a team of gentlemen that are moving around with microphones. You just raise up your hand if you have a question. They will be able to give you a microphone. You mention the name of the company, your name, and then you raise your question. Now, our presenters, if you could just stand behind your respective names, as you come on the screen. Honorable James Matthew Godfrey, if you could just stand behind each and every name of yours. Yeah, sure. Should be the other way around.
Life.
Honorable,
Sometimes we
if you could
try.
just extend to the next,
Ask why.
and then
We cry.
Godfrey as
break,
well
And wish we could die.
may move to the next.
Hope. Daydream. Window shopping things we could buy. School fees. Daily cheese. We get on our knees. And still, nothing comes with ease. But if we keep getting up again and again, understanding that no pain, no gain, never giving up, pushing up, hooking up with a startup, you stand up, set up, and realize it's time to wake up. Because you are a winner and headed up. No dream is beyond reach. Because DFCU is making more possible. DFCU, with pleasure.
Okay. Yes, Matthew, if you could just move to the next and Godfrey. Okay, so now we open up the floor for questioning. Who is going first? I saw a hand from, I think Antonio. You had raised up your hand? Sure.
Yeah. Is it on? Thank you, Malik. My name is Antonio from Mobiki. I'm a director for MIN Mobiki East Africa. We reckon that here in Uganda there is a serious, it's very difficult for the clients to get financing from the banks for many reasons that we all know. Financials, not everything is accounted for. Now, is there a way the bank, and this question will be to Mr. Godfred Mundua, is there a way a bank can allow the suppliers to take back the assets in case there is any problem if the client defaults, meaning doing a pre-contract together, not only with the client but also with the supplier, in a way that the supplier can take the vehicle back or the asset, equipment, in case something happens, so that we, the supplier, can give an extra comfort to the bank so that it is easier for the bank to approve and finance the clients. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Antonio. Next question. Is there? Okay. I can see a question from Mr. Nsereko.
Thank you. Thank you, DFCU, for organizing this and for our presenters. My name is Isaac Nsereko. In DT Logistics, we are a long-haul company. Considering a JV, I think my question will go to James and possibly CNOOC. If we come 3 logistics companies together at this stage, the entity will be new, but assuming we are all on the national database, how would we qualify, how would we go past the fact that the JV is not on the database, but the 3 of us are?
Thank you very much, Isaac. Next question. Could we have a question from the audience? Okay. A question, there is one at the back. Julius?
Thank you very much. My name is Julius Katera. I work in DFCU Bank. My question will go to Mr. Chaligonza. Sometime last year, if you remember, the price of crude went into negative territory. There was a time when a barrel of oil was minus a couple of dollars. It was for a very short period of time, but it was a bit of a concern, especially for countries like ours, which are likely going to be high-cost producers. My question is, at what point do you think Uganda breaks even? And what sort of counter-cyclical measures do you have in the event that the price of oil falls below production cost? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Julius. One more question from the audience. I'm seeing a hand behind there. Okay. Can I take it that the questions are done? All right. Probably I'll just ask 2 questions personally. One is to Matthew. We know that there are tier 2 and tier 3 players probably in the audience. But we are also aware that probably there's discussions that are happening where some tier 1 companies are already in the final stages of being awarded some contracts. What would be your advice to those 2 tiers if they are to position themselves to do works that shall be subcontracted to them? And then the other question goes to Honorable. Honorable, we know that the area that you take care of, that's police, has been characterized by a lot of sentiments coming from the locals where they think that they have been left out in the industry. How are you safeguarding their interests from a political side? I guess those would be the questions that we will have for tonight. Let's get answers for them, and then we move to the next stage. Thank you.
think let me go first. The first question was to the bank from Antonio. Just for clarity, your question was if a bank finances a client, specifically who's seeking asset financing, and the facilities or the contract does not go well, can the bank return this asset to the supplier? Was that the question? Okay. Yes, I get it. I think it's one of the discussions. You know, one thing we have discussed before is, as a bank, we're speaking to many of these equipment suppliers because, as mentioned, this oil is going to be around just for about 3-4 years. So if you invest so much in assets now, and in 3-4 years there's no job, what do? Do you turn your yard into a scrap yard? That's one thing. And related to the question from Antonio, we are speaking to the suppliers, one, to see if we can have a buyback arrangement. The buyback works in 2 ways. One, if you who was taking this equipment for various reasons, you're not able to deliver on the contract, and then we can have a buyback arrangement such that the equipment will have only been used by you to the extent when you have a challenge and you're not able to continue. So that means the bank takes over and the bank hands over this equipment to the supplier. That's a discussion that we're still having. I can't commit to you at this point that we have signed agreements, we have agreed, but it's one of the discussions that we're having. And then number 2, it also helps you, I think, in many ways. You may not necessarily need to buy these assets because you have a contract which is going to run for 1 year. Yeah? So there might be need where we can actually have this equipment or vendors who can supply these equipment and say if your contract is going to run for 1 year, for the 1 year that you're operating, you can actually take this equipment, you pay so much. So it becomes an operating expense that you have on a monthly basis. Up for 12 months, then thereafter, the equipment can be returned back to the supplier. It's a discussion we are having. I can't tell you for now that has been agreed, but that's something that we're talking about. Thank you.
I think I can go next.
Yes, go to.
Done.
Yeah, sure.
I think there are about 3 questions that were asked that relate to us, to me. One was asked by Isaac Nsereko about 3 companies registered on the National Supplier Database, but the JV is not registered. I want to tell you that you don't need to register the JV provided the companies are registered on the NSD, that is good. But if you are registering with a foreign company to do work that is reserved for a Ugandan company, that JV has to be approved by PAU. And it is in the regulations, the Ugandan company must have at least 48% participating interest for that JV to actually be approved by PAU, and you are able to do work that was otherwise reserved for Ugandan companies, but there is no single Ugandan company that can do it alone. So that is, I hope I've answered you, Mr. Isaac Nsereko. The other that was asked by the DFCU staff member about the instance of, or the scenario of a negative crude oil price. As CNOOC, I can tell you, we don't have control over the world oil prices, but by the time FID is taken, the investors will have decided that this project is viable. And even if it went to negative price, it wouldn't be negative forever. And you are very aware that the negative price was occasioned by circumstances that related to COVID and other acts of God that it is it's very abnormal. It was a very abnormal scenario, and we hope that it won't happen again in the foreseeable future. So you can have confidence that the price will still stay up there. And you talked about the break-even. You wanted to know about the break-even point of Uganda's oil and gas project. I'm not at liberty to discuss the project economics here, but maybe the authority can delve more on that. About tier 1, tier 2, my brother Malik asked about tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. My advice to them, if you're tier 1, tier 2, and your Ugandan company contracted or subcontracted, my advice is be ready, get the right partners. These partners include financial institutions like DFCU, where you are assured of finances. Get into a joint venture with another partner that you think will help you. For example, if you're not very strong in a certain field, make sure that you form a joint venture to harness another, like if you don't have experience in oil and gas, as you are aware, many Ugandan companies lack oil and gas experience. So feel free to look out there, get a company that is well experienced in oil and gas, partner with it, and train your staff, let them get certifications, also get certifications, have a running management system. For example, if you don't have certifications are meaning ISO and the like, ISO management systems and all that, and ensure you have a QHSC management system that is running. At least for now, that is the advice I can give. I hope I answer your question very well. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Honorable now.
Hello. Thank you so much, management, customers, distinguished participants. I think the first comment I will make is that the oil industry is unstoppable now. Whether local content is ready or not, the moment the joint venture partners have an FID and an EPC contractor, we shall only be talking of what did we achieve, 10, 20, 30, or the 48%. I thought that is very important. But also, before I answer directly the question, as the chairman of the Parliamentary Caucus, I don't want to be like somebody who has visited the bride's family and gets a good lunch without asking for the bride. Chairman and the CEO, I'm asking for the branches. The Bulisa branch as a priority, Masindi, and the International Airport Industrial Park. And in that sequence, please. So that next time we come here, these good customers of DFCU will be comfortable transacting down at the location. I hope nobody else can come and take the bride when I was just enjoying the lunch. The other comment, given my shipping, forwarding, and logistics, when the asset financing and leasing is very good. And I think Godfrey deliberately kept the last slide as the dessert. Can we request at least two things? That, yes, the insurance, I know, is already covered within the bank negotiations, and I hope that this is not in the next few months we should have another engagement where we should also have a presentation from insurance, because I know most clients will be interested in the cost of insurance as well. But the question of the after-sale services is very important for when you go for leasing and asset financing. When we brought in companies like Konoike to replace the Komatsu, the Japanese to replace the Caterpillar, it was a condition that we had a top-of-the-range maintenance workshop of that equipment in Jinja, and I participated also in establishing it at Ugembe, because it would be dangerous to have a lot of equipment come in the country, and then you have challenges as far as maintenance. So after-sale is very important, because at the end of the day, the scrap value, the terminal value, which the customer is remaining with, depends on maintenance. For us as, we have been very careful in this law. We took care of the local communities. We have actually used the word host community. We took care of the revenue sharing in the law. That would take care of what the community will get. But whereas we had challenges earlier to get financing for oil roads, government found it wise to call it oil roads, but the roads are there to stay. So that's already a benefit for us as a community. The challenges we had in land, I told you, we've sorted them since. And the payments, I was in Hoima and I can see new plan at Takama in Ulisa, they are back. So the issue, I talked about compensating those people. So the challenge was there. Those other issues we can deal with on their side of government. Of course, we would have wanted to be paid more than 3.5 million for the industrial park, but that's a debate for another day. What we are saying is that the corridors required have been given, the town council for Port Settlement are there. Of course, we look forward to these big tier 1 companies coming. We expect, naturally, in the modern management, you look at internal and external customer. A serious company must also look at the social corporate responsibility and make sure that the host community is also. But government, using the government agencies, NEMA, and that's why we've done the environmental impact social. Back in the days when the Nigerians had problems, they were only looking at environmental impact assessment. But it has since been enriched to look at the economic, social, and health aspects. So that is already contained, and we have made our submission. Possibly, I would only request Petroleum Authority and the CNOOC. There would be more business if you don't use the camp model. I am for putting up modern facilities which can be taken over, because Uganda does not have a luxury of putting in place 10,000 temporary units when my police officers, my teachers, my health workers. So we have put town councils, locate them. We can join you and show you where we can put them. And in a matter of time, they would be able to reach at their place of work. It is not a core function for the oil companies. Let them do the tier 1 business. It should be our private sector working with government agencies to know what does defense want, what does internal affairs want, what does the local government require, but also it's a big opportunity for the tourism inroad. The high executives who would want to stay in an equivalent of over $100 per day, that is a very good startup for those who want to go in tourism, high-end tourism in the area. The oil companies can stay there at about $150, $200 per day, but it will lead to high-end tourist destination after oil. And that's the only area I disagree with Petroleum Authority and the joint venture partners. I have it in writing to them. And for me, on that one, I'm going to raise the red flag when they want to make temporary removable. Temporary removable was very good for the exploration phase, but now we are at a development phase. So we are not doing something to run away. So it doesn't make sense to do a 5,000 units at Tilenga when you know you need only 400 workers, because we have the information at the end of the project. So rather you spread them, let some be taken by private sector as hotel, catering, and tourism areas. Some can go to local government because you need workers to remain there. Then some can go to our security. I think at the end of the day, any project manager would want a good terminal value and scrap value. But to come and decommission by destruction at a cost of recoverable cost, I think that is. I only want to encourage Ugandan businessmen. This is your money. The joint venture companies have been given a lot of latitude and leverage by government to spend recoverable cost. It is our money. So when we are going for this business, kindly don't go as beggars. Uganda will actually pay for this money at the end of the day. So that should give our people confidence to go in an assertive manner and grab this business. You've heard of Kenya, proudly speaking, of 50% in standard gauge. You had the Magufuli. Actually, Tanzania is much higher than Kenya in local content. So we just need to liberate our minds and speak confidently on that issue. I think that was what I could. Very finally, on the aspect of the one-stop centers and that business model of the business park, we could have more engagement about it. I want to thank once again the CEO and the chairman board, because some time back this debate had gone quiet. I kept disturbing my good friend William, and last year when I met them, I think around October, September, we were discussing it, not knowing it would come up this fruition. So, CEO and Chairman, I want to thank you so much. We look forward to the next engagement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First of all, most of the questions have been answered. I'm just going to clarify on two things. I think there was a question from Mr. Katera in terms of the fluctuations of oil prices and the break-even price. As you have heard, we spent about $3.5 billion in the exploration period to discover over 6 billion barrels. That means our finding cost to get the amount invested to get 1 barrel was less than $1. It is, on the world average, very commendable, because such finding costs are only in few countries. Most of the average finding cost is $8 to $10 per barrel. So it starts with the finding cost. We've been able to find oil at a very low price. The next goes to lifting costs, and that's because government is watching costs. So the lifting costs will have to be about $4 or so. And then you add on the transport tariff. So on average, our break-even point is in averages of 20, which is good for the oil and gas industry. Now, notwithstanding, we understand that oil and gas industry has had price fluctuations from the time immemorial. You have never had a period where you have stable oil prices. I think I remember the first waves were in '93, and later we had another slump in 2001, and we had this latest one. So the industry is aware of this. Any country that has recovered resources is aware of this, and that's why the parliamentarians put up a good law. Under the Public Finance Act, there is what we call a petroleum fund, and that part of the petroleum fund is to have a stabilization effect, that in cases where the slump happens in oil prices, you should be able to get some of that money you have gained when the prices are high. We expect them to go to 80, to 100, to 60. So when you're making that windfall, you should be saving some in the stabilization fund to be able to cater for the rainy days. And that's how oil companies and oil businesses have handled it. And Uganda has not been separate from that. When I come to Mr. Nsereko, you had two issues, a joint venture partner. There are two types of joint ventures that we look at in the, when we're approving these. One, there is an incorporated joint venture. When it's incorporated, it forms a new legal entity. We encourage that new legal entity to register on the National Supplier Database because it's a separate legal entity from the two people that are forming the joint venture. But there is that unincorporated joint venture that does not need to be registered the moment the two companies are both on the database. I hope that can clear up. But any joint venture with an international company needs to be approved by the authority in line with Regulation 9 of the National Content Regulations. Otherwise, I would like to thank DFCU for this wonderful conference, and would like to thank the participants. My colleague, Mr. Simon Ojilong, who is the National Supplier Database Administrator, is seated behind. He's ready to take you through the information required. He has brochures and booklets. You can pick a copy on the process of registration. We shall also share with you our phone numbers, just in case you get a challenge anywhere, and we'll be willing to interact more with you as an authority as we deliver the oil and gas industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our dear speakers. As we come to the end of our conference, I would like to request the CEO, Mr. Matthias Katamba, to come over for a group photo, but also he will eventually invite Mr. Eric Arohanga to give the last closing remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, we can have them. We can have it down. Maybe for recognition. Let's have it down.
So as we
agribusiness.
First of all,
to the Pearl of Africa.
Firstly, I would like to thank you all very much and most sincerely for having taken the time to be with us today. We appreciate that you've spent the morning with us and the early afternoon. In a special way, we would like to thank all our presenters today. We've not come to the end of the session because we have a closing by Honorable Eli Karuhanga. But I would like us to take the opportunity to have a group photograph. And in doing that, I would like to have our presenters, but also I would like to invite the staff of DFCU Bank who are here. So they can be with us in that photograph. I'd like to, if you can stand up, I also want to use the opportunity to introduce to you our senior managers, Mr. William Sekabembe, Chief Commercial Officer, and also the Executive Director. His team ensures that we're able to do this and that we're able to take care of you very well. Veronica Sentongo, at the back there, if you can stand up, our Chief Change and Innovation Officer. She's an engineer and makes sure that the business, the wheel keeps spinning and changing and adapting to time and being able to do the things that add value to you. I don't know if we have any other of the senior managers, but I would like you to join us at the front so that we can have a picture. Our presenters for the day, if you can come forward. Thank you very much. As well, Chairman, if you don't mind, you can also join us. We'll take you as one of the presenters. I would like to invite the managers to join us as well. Julius, please do join us. Diana, Farida, saw you there. Who else, please? Jude. I want to thank the marketing team that was here pretty much putting this together in the wee hours of the night. Wana Kasasa here, in charge of SMEs, critical person for all of you, our team in leasing, Elizabeth. You never see Elizabeth, she's in the back. Credit, making sure that the approvals happen right. Carol, did I see you in the room or not? Okay. Our team from corporate, Malik. Okay, Godfrey, here as well. Okay. Great. I may not have mentioned your name, but please do come and join us. Very quickly, we'll do this quickly so we can then move on to have the address from Mr. Eli Karuhanga. We're going to be doing this a bit regularly. Take this as the launch. After this, we will do it sector by sector. So we try and get the information out to as many Ugandans as possible in terms of figuring out how they can all be part of this. So perhaps I'll join in now. Okay, so I would now like to ask our presenters to stay behind very quickly so that we can give you something very small before we go into the closing. I know the industry that you are in is full of disclosure. They are all items from DFCU, purely acknowledgement for the great work today. So if I can just ask Rukshana or Malik quickly, if we can, where would you like us to do this? No microphone. Maybe we'll just take the advantage of the picture, right? Yeah. But we don't shake hands in the data, right? Yeah. Very difficult to do this. That's the middle. One for the chairman. Yes, one for the chairman. Yes. This is an in-house photo, so you can have the handshake. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my singular honor and pleasure to invite Honorable Eli Karuhanga, who is also the chairman of the board of DFCU Limited, the holding company, to address us as we close. As you know, Honorable Eli Karuhanga is an authority in this space, has been around advocating for the participation of Ugandans in the oil and gas sector. He's also the chairman of the Private Sector Foundation, and so the participation of the local private sector in Uganda is very dear and personal to him. Also the chairman of the Uganda Chamber of Mines. I cannot make any attempt to make a full introduction, and that's why we will play his CV and background as we prepare to have him address us. He's going to address us virtually, as is the nature of things today. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga, Chairman, Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum. An advocate of the Supreme Court of Uganda, Honorable Dr. Eli Karuhanga is one of the founding partners of Kampala Associated Advocates and also the founding and standing chairman of the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, an organization that seeks to promote and develop Uganda's mining and petroleum operations and services. He previously served as president and director of Tullow Uganda Operations Pty Limited from 2006 to 2014 and was also the senior advisor, Africa, for Tullow Oil. Dr. Karuhanga lends his breadth of expertise to a number of institutions, including PSFU, where he serves as the chair, Sustainable Business for Uganda Platform, where he serves as the co-chair, and DFCU Limited, where he served as the chairman of the board since 2014. Dr. Karuhanga has promoted mining and petroleum activities in Uganda and is often invited to address international business conferences on oil and gas and mining all over the world.
Good. Thank you very much. Very kind words. Our very dear, esteemed customers who have been selected specifically for this. Our bank board chairman, Mr. Jimmy Mugerwa, managing director, Matthias, and the entire management and staff of DFCU. Members of the media, if any, ladies and gentlemen, I have been sitting here and listening to every word that was spoken, and it made me think quite a lot as I make these closing remarks. It occurred to me, and I think Mr. Mondua pointed it out. He and I shared this word, epiphany. It's not a common word that is used, but it means a sudden realization of something you have always taken for granted. This story of oil and gas has been around for a long time. People got into it, burnt their fingers and ran away. And now, these days, it has come back. So some people who got burnt, they don't want to hear anything about it. Others who had not tried, they are thinking that might be a wrong place to go to. But let me tell you, this is a big elephant which has come now, and it's not going to go back. And it has entered our house. And our house is a small house. And we have to fit in with it. And we have to fit in with it very quickly. And nothing can happen. We can't manage this elephant without money. So the banks have a duty to make sure that money is available to feed this elephant. And it's Ugandans who are charged with the duty of taking care of their country. Yes, oil and gas is a very expensive business. We need foreigners to come, and they have come. And we hear this word FID. Very many people now are using it. Sometimes they don't know. You meet a person on the street and he says, when is FID? When you ask him what does it mean, he says, I don't know. But everybody is talking about FID. Now, this thing, I want to make it very clear to you, this epiphany story. This sudden awakening of something you have always taken for granted, and all of a sudden it comes your way, and you don't know what to do. Let me give you an example of what I understand it to mean. You see, Uganda, it has been said, our GDP is 35 billion. Now we are getting between 15 and 20 billion. But a few years ago, Uganda was 20 billion GDP, the entire wealth. But what is the wealth of our neighbors? In Rwanda, the GDP is 10 billion. So we are talking about bringing a new wealth of 15 to 20 billion into our economy. Burundi is 3 billion. South Sudan is 3.8 billion. So added together, they are 16 billion. We are talking about a sudden burst of the banks, of our economic banks, if you like, flood of wealth into our house, and we have to be prepared for it. So are we? Are we prepared? And as I said at the beginning, we can't do this without money. So who has the money? The banks. So are the banks aware? Are they prepared? DFCU has got about more than 500,000 customers. They couldn't fit in this room. So Maki has said he's going to make it sector by sector by sector. But if we had to be prepared and we had had this alarm, the room should be full of DFCU customers trying to understand that they are in a house which is being squeezed by a new elephant. And by the way, let me tell you, this new elephant is attracting more elephants to come in the house. Only last week, I was on a Zoom. I'm glad that Mr. Mundua attended. I think we had 300 Russians who want to come to Uganda, not to do oil and gas only. No, they want to go into manufacturing, into agriculture, into ICT, into tourism. Consider that Russia is the biggest tourist country in the world. Egypt, which receives 3 million visitors, 2 million of them are Russians. Now they want to come. They want hotels. They want to sit this. There is a new awakening. Now, our banks, our directors in the banks, is management in the bank, is DFCU, is it ready to not only take the challenges of oil and gas, but the challenges of what oil and gas normally brings in a country? Because it comes with a lot of a trailer of other opportunities. People follow oil and gas. The Indian High Commission has been having meetings with the private sector foundation. And we have held lots and lots of meetings with Indian conglomerates who are planning to come and set up their industries. Now that they know Uganda has some money to pay them. The Turkish people, last week, 3 weeks ago, I was in Turkey, addressing many Turkish groups. They have been here. They have been to Gulu. They are not looking for oil and gas. They are looking for big opportunities. They want to be financed by banks. So which bank is going to finance these people? Now, we, Ugandans, have ring-fenced certain sectors for ourselves. Parliament did that, the President has accepted, the Cabinet has accepted, we are excited, local content has made. Oil companies who are doing the business are pursuing, making sure that we have this. Power is implementing the ring fencing in Ugandan businesses. But these businesses that they are ring fenced, the amount of money required, we have never had of it before. I know one Ugandan company, which I think is going to get $70 million to do waste management. Now, which bank is going to give this Ugandan company $70 million? And by asking that company to pay 20%, where will 20%, that is $14 million, where will that company get $14 million? So we have to have a new awakening, a new epiphany. We have to think outside the box. We have to re-evaluate. Our boards of directors of the bank must know that there is a flood which has come, it's a tsunami. You can't have the economies of Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, all of a sudden attacking our economy like this, and then we think that business must be done as usual. So we are now regularly talking about oil and gas, it's FID and this and that, Power is presenting this. I am always making speeches about explaining people about oil and gas. Jimmy is always talking. We are always talking about oil and gas, but we have not been thinking about money, how to finance and how to make Ugandans have this, be part of this story, in order for it not to be in the hands of foreigners only. Look, this industry can be in the hands of foreigners, without doubt. Because once we have signed the FID and everything is done, oil companies have got deadlines to perform. If the Ugandans are not available, they will get others come and do our job, ring-fenced or not ring-fenced. The oil companies must perform in a given time frame. So foreigners will have to come and do these jobs that are earmarked for Ugandans. And there is nothing we are going to do about it unless we think outside the box. Nigeria spent, I'm sorry to mention names of countries. I should be more diplomatic than that. Some countries spent 40 years without local content. And only 8 years ago, they started local content, and it has transformed the economy of that country. Now you have that country's banks are here, insurance companies here in Uganda. You can see they are now the biggest economy in Africa, out of local content participation only. For us, we are starting the business with local content in place, but we can't start business in local content in place without the banks, without the money. And the banks cannot sit down and do business as usual, the way they do it in London, the way they do it in Singapore. So what are we going to do to make sure that our bankers, Mr. Katamba and your team, William Sekabembe and your team, these people sitting here since morning, they have left their businesses. They have come here to hear how the banks are going to help them, the few who have come. So we have to completely tear the exercise books we studied at Makerere University and other universities, throw them away, sit down, reevaluate, rethink, readjust, reassess, and revamp, and start and make sure that we take the bull by the horns and manage our society. The government has done its job. The president has done his work. There's nothing can blame him. Parliament has performed. My brother Mukitari has explained. The people of Bulisa can't even believe that the little Bulisa, downtrodden little village is now got 9 or 16 kilometers of tarmac road around them house, with a school, with a health center built by Italo. They cannot believe this. All of a sudden, things have changed. So the whole country is now holding bated breath, wondering how are we going to meet this challenge. I cannot continue because I know you are tired. You have been listening to very, 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 very unique and great presenters. I thank each one of you. But I'm leaving these questions in your mind. What are we going to do to finance these people? You can't ask 20% down payment from contracts that we have never had in our lives. If the country's biggest investment has been of Jagari at 1.4 billion, now we're talking about 20. How are we going to do it? So bankers association, sit down, find a way how you are going to syndicate these loans. Let the boards of directors maybe form a meeting of all these banks, and we address these matters. I have been associated with the DFCU as a director of the bank since 2004. I've never seen anything like this. I have fear in my heart, and I want this fear to translate itself into yours. Because without fear, you cannot be able to be ready to confront an opportunity or an enemy. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Erika Ruhanga. I think we have now come to the end of our function. Again, I'd like to thank you for sparing all your time. Seated where you have been seated for all this long, it's not something that we do take for granted. But as we wind down the event, there's going to be a lunch, there's a sumptuous lunch, which is being served from outside. So you walk out, take the turn on your left, pick up plates, get served, and then you come back and have your meal. Once you're done, feel free to leave. Thank you very much once again.
Agribusiness. What does it mean? To the Pearl of Africa, agriculture is a